lengthy meeting, I think. So Sharon, if you would call the roll, please.
Yes, Councilmember Wenger.
Here.
Councilmember Richards.
Here.
Councilmember Hughes.
Here.
Vice Mayor Derwin.
Here.
Mayor Alves.
Here. Okay, thank you. Our first item, as always, is oral communications. If you wish to address the council on a subject not on the agenda, you may do so now. Please raise your hand in the Zoom app if you want to address.
Doesn't look like, oh, we
Okay, I see one. Kristi Corley, go ahead, please.
Hi, I was just wondering if we could also see the list of attendee names as we attend the town council meeting. I know you're all able to see the names, and I'm wondering why the community cannot see the names.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer that if you like.
Yeah.
So, through the chair, there's two different ways to hold a Zoom meeting. The system that the one we use is called a webinar, and unfortunately, webinar does not allow for attendees to see other attendees. We do provide for the count, but unfortunately, it's not a feature of the webinar meeting model. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Seeing Helen Quinn has her hand up. Go ahead, Helen.
Hold on, Helen. Hey, Helen, you need to unmute at your end.
Yes, okay. My question is it possible to just put a list of attendees in the minutes of the meeting?
I believe there is a list of attendees in the meeting minutes.
Okay, good. That I think allows us to know at least who was here.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other public comment, Kristi, yes.
Hold on. Okay, Kristi, you need to unmute at your end.
I'm just wondering if you could tell us how many people are attending at the beginning now?
Through the chair, we have created an option. It should be in the upper part of the window where you can see how many people are in the meeting. It does fluctuate during the course of the meeting, so I'm not sure how to give a final count, but that should be available for people to see at this point.
We cannot see it.
Okay.
At the moment, there are 31 attendees and 13 panelists.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. If there are no other public comments, then we will move on to item 1, the recommendation by the town clerk to certify the November 3rd, 2020 municipal election. Sharon, do you want to present this quickly? Or?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Alves, council members. You have before you the certified results of the November 3rd, 2020 election to fill 2 open seats on the town council, each a 4-year term expiring in 2024. According to the official report, the names of those elected to the Portola Valley Town Council are Jeff Alves and Sarah Wernicke. The California Elections Code requires that upon certification of the results, the town council must declare the election results by adopting a resolution as included in your packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Assuming there's no questions on this one, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
So moved.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Do I need to recuse myself?
No, you don't. Nope.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if there's any public comment on this item.
Yes. Sorry. Is there any public comment on the certification of the election results? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion from Anne and a second. I believe John was in second. So yep. Hold on, I see one hand up. Jon Silver, go ahead.
Just unmuting myself. I'm not sure whether I should congratulate all who ran in this election, those who won, those who were elected, and those who were not, for a good, decent exercise of democracy, or if I should say, you're all fake news, and we need to throw out all the ballots and start again. But I'll let you decide which one of those statements are from my heart of hearts. On that note, I'll let you get back to work.
Thank you, John. Only a council member from Atherton can ask us to overturn our results, I think. That's the new rule, apparently. So thank you. Okay. We had a motion by Ann and a second by John. And Sharon, if you could take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Wingert,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Councilmember Hughes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Derwin,
Aye.
Mayor Alves.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, Councilmember Wernickehoff. Our next item is the council we will start with recognizing our council member, and then we'll move on to the reorganization of the council. So to that end, I have a proclamation, which I have right here, and I've even signed it. And Sharon, I'll return this to the office as I promised I would. Proclamation of the mayor honoring Ann E. Wingert on the occasion of her retirement from the Portola Valley Town Council. Whereas in 1999, Ann Wingert moved to the town of Portola Valley following participation in an AIDS training ride and fell in love with the town's natural beauty. And whereas Ann has served as council liaison to numerous town committees and commissions, served on the Planning Commission from 2004 to 2007, and served 13 years on the town council from 2007 to 2020, serving as mayor 3 times. And whereas Ann has served as a council representative on various county committees, including Airport Roundtable, CCAG Finance Committee, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And whereas Ann holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Bucknell University and an MBA from Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania. And whereas among her numerous governmental activities, Ann has been the council liaison to the Finance Committee since 2008, providing both the Finance Committee and the Town Council with her invaluable expertise in maintaining the fiscal health of our town. And whereas Ann has never wavered in her commitment to the values of Portola Valley and has been able to exercise patience and diplomacy with all bodies and citizens to make sure they understood and appreciated the town's processes and values. And whereas Ann is an avid cyclist, you have no doubt seen Ann on our roads training for travel vacations like mountain biking in Mongolia, cycling cross country, riding Land's End to John O'Groats, traversing some 1,000 cycling miles from the southern port of mainland England to the northern port of mainland Scotland, and more. And whereas Ann has been an active docent at Año Nuevo State Park, leading guided walks of the elephant seal colony in their natural habitat since 2000. And whereas Ann, Leslie, and their dog Cody feel so fortunate to live in Portola Valley, where cycling and hiking are so beautiful and accessible. And now, therefore, I, Jeff Alves, Mayor of the town of Portola Valley, on behalf of past and present council members, staff, volunteers, and people of the town of Portola Valley, convey our most heartfelt respect, admiration, and appreciation for Ann Wingert's outstanding contributions to the town of Portola Valley. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the town of Portola Valley to be affixed hereto this 9th day of December, 2020. Congratulations, Ann. We have a few people I know who want to say some words, starting with me. I'll tell a brief story of the first time I met Ann. It was in 2008, and I had just applied to join the Architecture and Site Control Commission, the ASCC, and Ann was the council member assigned with vetting me, as I believe I was the only applicant at the time. We got on the phone, and I don't remember the exact words, but the gist of it was Ann said, "I'm here to determine that you're not a psychopath." Something to that effect. And I was fine because I can appear normal for long periods of time. And apparently I did well enough through that first interview to continue on. I've worked with Ann on the council now for 9 years. I will jokingly say that she's in some ways the fiscal conservative among us. She's always sort of the rigorous, the financial mind. And as I said earlier today in my message to the town, it's good to have somebody looking at every dollar twice to curb the impulses of someone like me. And Ann has been a tremendous steward of our finances, a great person to work with, and has been able to get along with everybody. And it's been a really valuable skill to have. So Thank you, Anne, and I know we haven't seen the last of you, but I wish you well, and I'm sure you'll be keeping an eye on everything we're doing. So
Thank you,
with
Jim.
that, we have others who want to speak. So I'll start with my colleagues in the council, and then we've got some representatives from some of our local colleagues, elected colleagues. And then if anyone from the public wants to speak, they will be able to speak as well. Marianne wanted to go first. Marianne, go ahead.
I don't have to go first, but I have a lot of words. Is that good to go first or not first?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go first.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Mine is prepared and I will give it to Anne when I'm done. These are a few words of goodbye to my colleague, Anne Wingert. Sometime in the summer of 2007, my council colleague, the late Ed Davis, noticed the desperation in my eyes at the horrifying thought of spending another 4 years as the sole producer of estrogen on a 5-member public body. And he suggested we talk to Anne Wingert about applying for the soon-to-be open council spot. I didn't know Anne then, but I did trust Ed. So we talked to Anne. She filed her papers, and in an uncontested election, we had a lot of those in the old days, she was elected to the Portola Valley Town Council. Now, I greatly respected my fellow council members, but serving on a council with 4 alpha males, most of whom did not really know what to make of me, was kind of like being the scrubby little toyon in a forest of 500-year-old redwoods. Anne was everything I was not. She had an MBA from Wharton. She had worked in the heady world of high finance and real estate development deals. She came from a large, happy family in Pennsylvania. She was in a stable relationship. She had a sunny disposition, and she carried herself with grace and composure. As I said, she was everything I was not. Our views differed as well. I was the stereotypical well-heeled environmentalist and argued for the daylighting of Sousel Creek at town center. I argued against the proposed artificial turf field at the Priory, and I was inclined to bring every regional environmental issue that crossed my desk to the council for approval. I tended toward raw, take no prisoners blunt language and fits of passion. But we were both there for the same reasons: to give back to our community, to do what was right for the greater good, and to always try to find the humor in the most taxing of circumstances. Plus, we both had 2 dogs, and as it turned out, we both felt inspired and emboldened to broach the subject of planning for a more diverse, more affordable housing stock in Portola Valley, a posture that cost us both dearly. She was the person I turned to when personnel issues hit a fevered pitch, or to understand what story our budget actually told and did not tell. I watched her measured, steady way of analyzing a problem, and I learned to be more circumspect. Her eternal optimism, her infectious delight at a bike ride at dawn against the silhouette of the Western Hills was contagious and kept me going through my most unbearably dark days. She was a solid ally, a person I could count on to always have my back, to pick me up when I had managed to get myself way out on a public limb, to make me laugh as we rehashed interminable, impossible council meetings the next morning, both outraged and exhilarated at the same time. There is this thing that happens when you serve on a town council for a decade or more, where you deliberate in the public space, your friends and neighbors staring you down, each word being recorded, a reporter slumped over a notebook in a hardback chair in a back row, and for a long time, the most prominent town founder, wedged upright in an aisle seat near the front of the room, his worn copy of the US Constitution tucked away in a pocket. The lived experience of democracy becomes greater than any one issue or any one person, and you begin to feel a part of history. In this case, one in a lineage of Portola Valley town leaders stretching back to 1964. When this happens and you share the experience with the same person for 13 years, a profound bond is forged and an intimate relationship is created that is unlike any other I have observed or felt in my long life. You learn to read that person's body language even before she speaks, a squinting of the eyes, a raising of one eyebrow, a slight hesitation before talking. When Anne told me last summer that she would not be running for re-election, my first reaction was despair. I spent the next day at home with my dogs, bereft. On day 3, my mood shifted. I was furious with her, furious that she was leaving me behind, furious that she was escaping the punishment of public service on the front lines during a pandemic when it seemed like every angry villager was showing up at virtual meetings with pitchforks. Finally, on day 4, I began to surrender to the fact that this was just how it was going to be, and that what was best for Anne was best for all of us. Thank you, Anne, for changing the council dynamic back in 2007, for consistently elevating the conversation, for making us all better council members through the quiet example of your exceptional leadership. Thank you for your gift of friendship that has sustained me for 13 years. Try as I will to remember Barack Obama's words that these elected official jobs are just temporary and we are all just passing through. I will still miss you. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm gonna cry. Every second and fourth Wednesday night for a very long time.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Those were lovely, lovely, lovely thoughts. And I do want to see the printed version. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary Ann. John, Craig, do you want to say something? And then we'll move on to our.
John's talking muted. So if
Yeah, I got it. Sorry. No, I was looking for the button. So I should have gone before you, Mary Ann. That was really lovely. As you probably expect me to go on for a long, long time, Ann, I'm going to surprise you and probably not do that. But I just want to briefly say it's been really great serving with you. I have some stories I'd love to tell, but I can't because of the Brown Act. You know which ones they are. And I'm sure you're really upset that you have to leave us at this point. And so we'll be here to, you're welcome to join us anytime to brighten your Wednesday evenings. And I expect that at some point we'll be able to talk you back into some kind of connection a little closer to our crazy town politics. So best of luck. We'll be talking, I'm sure.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Craig.
I'm also not going to be as lengthy as Mary Ann and as detailed and probably not nearly as eloquent either. Anne, it's been a pleasure serving with you for the last 7 years on the council. I think from the first day I started through just about every meeting I can think of, you've offered a different angle on whatever the subject matter was, whether it was a council meeting or a finance committee meeting or a subcommittee renegotiating the sheriff's contract. You've helped me see things from angles that I wouldn't have looked at them through otherwise. And I think that for me and for the whole council has been one of your most valuable aspects that you've brought to your volunteer service to the community is that ability to look at something from the other side, to say, well, what if we consider it this way? And that's been very helpful in balancing out other ideas and other directions that we might have gone and made sure that we stick to a course that works well. So thank you for that. And I endeavor to try and do the same thing from your example as often as I can. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Craig.
Thank you, Craig. Marc Berman is here, our Assembly member. Assemblymember Berman, would you care to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, and just really wanted to thank Anne for her almost 2 decades of service between the 13 years on the city council and the 3 or 4 years on the planning commission. Before that, I was doing some quick math, and that's probably 350 different meetings, official meetings, probably 1,000 coffees with constituents, and tens of thousands of hours of preparation. I hope everybody who's watching tonight understands how much work you all put in, the sacrifice that you make, and to do that for as long as you have, Anne, has had a huge and immeasurable impact on the town of Portola Valley. Also really want to thank you for the focuses that you had when you were mayor this last time. And you've been mayor 3 times. Yep. I served on the Palo Alto City Council for a term, and I wasn't mayor at all. So I was clearly doing something wrong, and I should have called you for advice back then. But your focus on emergency preparedness, sustainability, on an issue that's near and dear to my heart, affordable housing. You were gracious enough to host me and my staff for our forest fire town hall that we had last year. That was one of the best events that I've had in my 4 years in the state assembly. And you were kind enough to speak and start off that event. So just want to thank you so much for all of your sacrifice and commitment to the town of Portola Valley over the past almost 2 decades.
Well, thank you, Assemblymember Berman. It's been a pleasure to work with you as well. And I am hopeful our paths will cross in the future, and I think they probably will.
I look forward to that.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Jeremy, thought we might have someone from Anna's office. I don't see him on here.
No, I don't believe that he's joined, but I did receive from him something that I'd like to share screen if I could.
Is this from Nicholas? Yeah.
Yeah, this is from Congresswoman Eshu's office. Hopefully you can see my screen in just a moment. Yesterday, Nicholas, who's a field rep for Congresswoman Eshu, soft copied this recognition to you, Anne. I also got a copy of a letter that I will not share, that is just for your eyes. I will send that to you shortly, but her office sends their very best.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay. If there are no other representatives from our local offices.
Through the chair, one other
Yes.
thing, I know that both incoming Senator Josh Becker's office prepared a resolution as well. I have not seen that yet, but okay. There was also a resolution prepared by the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, and I wanted to share my screen.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and share that as well. Hopefully you can see that. Let me zoom in on the good parts. Let's get
Jeremy, don't read that, please.
I will just.
You have a long meeting coming up.
It looks
so
like
please.
the same thing that I read. It looks very similar to what I read, so I think it's.
I will read the bottom though. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Mateo, California, hereby recognizes and commends Ann Wingert for her service during her tenure as a Portola Valley Town Council member and 3-time mayor. And we will get you that once we receive it, Ann.
Okay. Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to comments from the public. John's hand was up for a little bit. Jon Silver, go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Good, good. Well, Jeff, you commented on Ann's financial and monetary expertise. And by the way, I agree with everything everyone has said. And Mary Ann, oh God, what a wonderful piece. And so I'm not going to, as a man who has often been known for using too many words, I'm going to try to keep it short. And I'm just remembering that when a group of us were out either planting things or pulling weeds or some of both for the creek daylighting project, Ann showed up as one who wasn't sure that the project was the best expenditure of funds, but having lost the vote like a good trooper, she was out there working with us on a Saturday morning. And at that time, having made my living from running a newspaper delivery business for, oh gosh, longer than I can remember, since I was 20. And anyway, I was considering a career change, and Ann suggested that and it's interesting because Ann, she's, of all the people who've ever served in the town council, I think she was the one I thought would be least likely to say what she did. She suggested I consider a new occupation. How should we call it? A gentleman of the evening? No one's laughing. My God, do I have to be more explicit? Okay, you get the idea. And
we get the gist, John. Yes.
Past my pull date. I mean, it cracked me up. Now, if only I'd looked halfway as good as Matt Stecker, who was out there working too, I would have been complimented. But when people break from character and do something you don't expect, it's really a lot of fun. But Anne, you've been such a wonderful servant of the public. We're all in your debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Don, very much.
Thank you, John.
And I'm trying to
And-
remember that story in great detail.
And Steve Toben has his hand up. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. And I've been reflecting with great fondness on our time shared on the dais in the schoolhouse over the last decade plus. And this morning, I actually woke up with a fantasy that somewhere, somehow, a list could be compiled of all the tasks you've carried out on behalf of the citizens of Portola Valley over the 16 years that you have given so selflessly of your time and talents. And then that list would be assigned to every household in Portola Valley to read around the dinner table. And if that exercise were carried out, I think it would be transformative in helping people understand just what pure, selfless public service really means. And it's not just the list of tasks that you've carried out so ably, but it's the manner in which you have conducted yourself over these past 13 years on the council and 3+ on the planning commission. Truly, your integrity, your professionalism, your courtesy, your never the desire for any particular public approbation, all done simply in the service of making this a better community for all of us to live in. It is precisely what Bill Lane lauded most in our public servants in this town. I'm so sorry that Bill has now left our company for the past 10 years, because if he were on this call tonight, he would be beaming from ear to ear. And I know what he would say. He would say, "Thank you, Ann Wengert, for your service to our town. And we are truly and forever in your debt." Thanks so much, Ann.
Dave, thanks very much. I'm a little slow on my unmute button.
Thank you, Steve. I see a hand up from a phone number. I don't know who you are, but go ahead and speak.
This is Bill Urban at 269-7017. How's that for an introduction?
Thanks, Bill. Go ahead.
Can you know it right? Yes, and Bill Urban and everyone else listening, I'm from the Finance Committee. I actually just rolled off the Finance Committee this year, as well as Ann is leaving, and just wanted to say a couple of words about her importance to our committee and to the town. I've been on the Finance Committee for 24 years, and when you serve on an advisory committee, when you have really no real power, there's two things that are quite important. First, you want the voice of yourself individually and those of your committee members to be heard and to be respected by the council. And secondly, you want to know that your work has had a positive difference for the town. And on both of those measures, I have to rate Ann an A+. I always felt that in her role as a liaison to our committee, she amplified our voices, our opinions, our views on all of the issues, not just the ones that the town council wanted to hear our opinions on, but also on quite a number where they hadn't asked for our opinion, but the council member or the committee members, myself or others, wanted to bring something before them. And I felt that she always made sure that we got a fair hearing, that the hearing was respected, and in situations when we were advising something that the council was not going to do, that she made a strong effort to come to a better solution for all of us. I remember that quite vividly, particularly a couple of years ago when we were talking about some tax issues. But more importantly, Ann and the other members of the committee, I'm sure, would agree with me that we're quite proud of some of the advances we've made during the time Ann's been with us in improving the financial strength of the town. Our reserves are at a record high. We're going to need them at some point when something happens to the town that we have to be prepared for. And we've been able to do that without tax increases at the local town level. She's also worked with us to help improve the way that we can get a fair return on the substantial reserves we have beyond just what we could get in the very limited offerings from the county and a money market account, in a number of other areas as well. So I've been proud to serve on the committee, and I've been proud to have Ann as our liaison, and we'll miss the opportunity to work both with her and with the Finance Committee in the future.
Bill, thank you very much, but I have to add my thanks to you and to all the work you did for the 24 years that you served as the Finance Committee Chair. You set a high, high bar, and I know that there's going to be a real void with your having moved on to other adventures as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I don't see any other hands up, although I do know several people are here. I think there were sort of several people are. Oh, Chip's got his hand up. Go ahead, Chip.
And Chip, you may need to unmute at your end if you can hear me.
I think you're unmuted.
Chip, you look unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Chip?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's working, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Give him a minute. Yeah, Chip, it looks like you're unmuted, but I don't know if your microphone's not working. We should probably move on. If Chip gets, if we can get it to work later, we'll come back to him and see if he can try again, maybe after the next item. Sorry. Okay, seeing no other hands up, we should probably move on. We do have quite a bit to cover tonight. So
Through the chair?
Yes.
Jeff, can I
I'm
just
sorry, you want to say
make a
something?
few comments?
Yes, of course.
I don't want to, I certainly want to be, first and foremost, I want to give all of you many thanks for your kind and your generous words. The time on the council has been an amazing journey. It's been filled with wonderful colleagues, dedicated and talented staff, engaged residents, as well as supportive friends and neighbors. And it's also allowed me to meet other like-minded volunteers throughout the county and within the broader region as well. So that is a unique and wonderful opportunity. When I joined the council in 2007, I had no sense of what lay ahead. No idea that I would become versed in municipal finance, affordable housing issues, public works, planning, financial systems, garbage contracts, sheriff contracts, fire issues, and in no small measure, in my case, aircraft noise. I am very proud of my efforts on these and many other issues as I work to bring a reasoned, fair, and analytical approach to the issues and create a win-win situation whenever possible. In addition to the hard work, but there have been glorious moments where the community came together, and this was obviously pre-COVID, to celebrate with picnics, barbecues, films, music, and I was fortunate enough to be mayor during the year-long 50th anniversary celebration. And we also came together in more somber moments to pay tribute to some of our most beloved volunteers, including Bill Lane, Ed Davis, and Shelley Briner. Portola Valley is an immensely fortunate community, and it was conceived, as you all know, around an open space ethos and reliant upon our volunteer government. And that's continued on now 56 years later. I have an abiding faith in the process and in my soon-to-be former colleagues and the staff, and to be able to manage the town moving forward. I do have a quick request of our residents to always be respectful of the work of this town council and all of our volunteers. There are no monetary rewards for any of us serving on the town's council, commissions, or committees. The reward comes from knowing you contribute your valuable time to making Portola Valley an even better place than it already is. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve my town. And so now I'm going to move to the next and I think very clear evolution. Welcome, Sarah. I hope your family's with you tonight because they'll need to be with you throughout this entire journey. And I know you have a wonderful and warm family. So welcome to you and to your family. And you will be a terrific addition to the council. And I also want to add a second welcome to the incoming mayor. I think that's always a difficult and challenging year, but I think that it will be a very positive one. So with that, I will be departing, but with the message of stay healthy, and to all of you, the happiest of holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Ann.
Bye.
Okay. With that, we will move on to our next item, which is the swearing in of the new council, well, two newly elected council members. Sharon, go ahead. I think you're still muted.
Thank you. Jeff, Sarah, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your full name.
I, Jeff Alfs,
I, Sarah Warnikoff,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly
solemnly
swear
swear or affirm
that I will support and defend
that
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will
bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the
to the
United
Constitution of the United States
and
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item then will be the election of a new mayor. Does anyone care to nominate a new mayor? John, I see your hand up.
I will nominate Mary Ann.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a nomination of Mary Ann Derwin by John and seconded by Craig. If there is no discussion, then roll call vote, please.
Is this the
Yep.
Sharon? Oh, no,
Jeremy, did Sharon?
Sharon's got it still. Yeah, she's going to go through the end of this.
Okay. Councilmember Alfs,
Aye.
Councilmember Warnikoff,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes.
I'm not the vice mayor.
I
just
know you're not.
But I vote yes.
Don't jump the gun on this.
Councilmember Hughes. Sorry. Mayor Derwin.
Aye.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Mayor Derwin. I'm going to move chairs now. Okay. All right, Mayor Derwin, I think you're on to nominate a vice mayor.
Now you're at the very end, the best seat because you're right by the garbage can.
That's
Take
right.
A lot of the candy and throw the wrappers in there, remember?
Well, yeah, you knew that, right? Yeah.
Before we, I would like to hear from Jeff, but before we do that, I think it would be good to elect a vice mayor. Do I have a nomination for a vice mayor candidate?
I nominate Craig Hughes.
Okay.
I'll second.
John seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, roll call. Sharon?
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Warnickoff,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
I'm still just a council member, but I will vote yes.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye.
Did I get your vote, Craig?
Yes,
Councilmember Hughes.
Aye.
He did vote for himself. Yes. Yes.
Congratulations, Craig. You are now Vice Mayor. I look forward to working with you. I'd like to say a few words about Jeff, and then perhaps others might want to say a few words about Jeff. And then perhaps Jeff would like to talk a little bit about his year as mayor. So I'd like to publicly recognize outgoing Mayor Jeff Alves for his extraordinary job as mayor in 2020 under this, excuse me, toughest of circumstances, a global pandemic, the forced transition of in-person meetings to virtual meetings, and consequently the forced transition of in-person town services to online services. This in the midst of a racial reckoning, an unstable economy, and clear and present danger from climate change in the form of the CZU complex fire right here in our own backyard. Portola Valley community member Felicity Barringer said it so well. Jeff showed leadership when he was handed the mayor's job as things were upended and we moved into a topsy-turvy, confusing, and frightening pandemic world. Jeff didn't just keep people informed, he did so with a compassionate understanding of the emotional roller coaster of pandemic restrictions. His weekly, and now this is me speaking, his weekly reassuring mayor letters were exactly the touchstone that our anxious community needed. I shared his letters with colleagues on other councils and other cities who thought them brilliant. In fact, Woodside Mayor Ned Fluitt was so inspired, he started his own weekly mayor letter. It may seem like a small thing, but to put those letters together every single week with exactly the right tone and enough accurate information to satisfy our very tuned in and very well-educated populace was an enormous responsibility. I want to share some more words from Felicity, borrowed from a letter she wrote to us after the election. As I look around the country at the wreckage of any sense of common purpose and trust, I believe local places will be the looms for reweaving the fabric of our nation. Obviously, with the Stanford Project in your futures, there's still going to be plenty of division, but Portola Valley is the kind of community that can be a building block for our national future. When I think of the arguments to come, I also think of the examples all of you have set. Thank you, Jeff, for leading us so well in troubled times. As I look into the future, COVID winter upon us, I see a new year that will bring more challenge and more change. A rocky economic climate, more social and racial unrest as we recalibrate, a frustrating RENA number to accommodate, the Stanford Project, as mentioned by Felicity, a possible return to drought conditions, and likely an even longer, more severe wildfire season. But there is also light. The Electoral College will do its job, and in January, we will inaugurate a new president. The vaccine arrives in our county next week for the first of the vaccinees. The social and racial justice movement produced 3 new council members under the age of 26 in South San Francisco, Redwood City, and East Palo Alto, offering a much needed fresh perspective in local politics. And if we are lucky, by the summer, we might actually be able to enjoy one of Cultural Arts' legendary summer concert series, sitting on real grass at the town center. I want to believe in Felicity's words that local governments will be the drivers of change, and our little town can become a building block for the new national future. With your example, Jeff, as a compassionate mayor, and our community's long history of fighting it out, but always coming back together when it counts to work out a solution, I think we might just do it. Colleagues, staff, does anyone have words to share? Craig.
Yeah, Jeff, I think you really had a great year as mayor last year. As Marianne said, you know, it was a tough year to be mayor in, but you really pulled it off. I think your tone and your information in your newsletters was extremely helpful. Helped give people a sense that, they weren't alone, that there was somebody out there helping them digest the torrent of information that's sometimes otherwise contradictory out there. And that I think was very helpful. And, I think that led to what I've joked with you privately about, that you may now be the most popular council member in the history of Portola Valley, given that we had over 90% of registered voters voted in our council election this year. And a vast majority, 60-something%, chose you as their candidate, or one of their candidates. So I think that your vote total from the voice of the people of the town reflects, I think, how well you did your job this year and previous years, and I'm sure you'll continue to going forward.
Thank you.
Any other council members?
Yep. I will just thank you, Jeff. I agree with Craig. You managed to meet just the right tone during this really tough year. And it reminds me that you seem to have managed to pull 2 difficult years as mayor. And your last one had some pretty tough issues as well. I don't think it was you. It was just the circumstance, I'm sure. But you did a great job, and we'll be working together for at least next year or 2. So onward.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks so much.
Anybody else? Oh, Jeremy, do I see your little hand there?
My
There is
little-
one attendee that would like to speak too. Do you want to speak now or after the
I'm
attendee?
happy to wait.
Okay. Do any other council members wish to speak? Okay, I'm going to call on our old friend, Jon Silver. John?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Good. Uncharacteristically, again, I'll try to keep, well, I may often try, but this time I hope I succeed in being reasonably brief. But first off, I want to, I think Jeff has had it's never easy being mayor. I'm going to say people think you have magical powers when you're mayor. They'll talk to you about deer eating their plants or the neighbor's dog barking. There were times when I was mayor, I felt like, oh, I know, I'll get you together with a person who has the barking dog who can chase off the deer eating your plants. But having said that, the first time I was mayor, I was 29, and we had our first really big El Nino storm. It was not an easy year. I turned 30. I thought the Almanac would run an article saying, no one's old enough besides me to remember this, but back in the 60s, there was a saying, don't trust anyone over 30. And I hope the Almanac would run a story, Mayor Silver no longer trustworthy. He's turned 30. But having said all that, God, Jeff has done a hell of a job. And I remember once when Bill Lane did something charitable, someone attacked him like it was he had some kind of conflict of interest. And of course, I said to Bill, no good deed goes unpunished. And Jeff, who has done such great work, I may not get the name right, Peninsula Clean Energy. Well, the fact that we can buy 100% renewable power if we choose to, and if we don't, we default to something that's very highly renewable and a much better deal than PG&E, is thanks to Jeff's work. And because without pay, he serves on this nonprofit board, someone accused him of having a conflict of interest. And, that's why we do these thankless jobs. It's a labor of love. But the one thing that I think the public doesn't know, and I'm ashamed that I never wrote this up and got it out in this past election, Jeff is a lifelong Chicago Cubs fan. I think he and his wife were married on Ryan Sandberg's birth date or his
first date. Yeah.
Well, the Cubs are important to both of them. Let's put it that way. And I was watching the Cubs when their first championship, was it since 1960? Well,
1908.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And Jeff didn't get to see it because he was at a meeting.
I saw the 10th inning. I was driving home from a meeting in the East Bay, and yes.
Public service is important, but hey, baseball, There's nothing more important than that. And, you know, I don't know whether to compliment Jeff or be exasperated because he didn't put first things first that night and stay home and watch the Cubs.
I was convincing Alameda County to form its own CCA. I think it was important.
I think your priorities are in the wrong order, Jeff. But with that, I'll close out. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. I'm checking to see if there are any more little hands up. I do not see any. Jeff, would you like to share any parting thoughts about this fantastic year?
I'll be brief, but sure. I'm going to ask Jeremy to share his screen for a minute because I found some rare video of me trying to mayor in 2020. Jeremy, when you're ready.
Hey, here we go.
Yes, this is the Monty Python. You can stop it now. This is yeah, it was that kind of year. Now, all of my colleagues in the council know that, you know, your year as mayor is the year that sort of just slowly, persistently crushes your dreams of whatever you thought you were going to accomplish over the year. And most years, you know, your dreams get crushed and there's always a second guessing. There's always this, I could have done more to make that initiative go forward. You know, 2020 was merciful in the sense that there was no question that, you know, I feel no second guessing of myself. There was just no chance anything was going to work out this year. So there's that. You know, that said, we did some pretty amazing things this year, given the circumstances that we found ourselves in. You know, largely through the work of the staff, but also ably overseen by my colleagues in the council and a lot of our volunteers. We were actually able to reinvent a lot of our services in an online, socially distanced and safe way, which was not a trivial thing to accomplish, but through the work of staff, we did it. And you know, things are not perfect, and we know that, you know, sometimes you wait longer than you'd like to for some of your meetings and things, and you know, we all apologize for that, but it is in fact functioning again, and that is the testament to a lot of people's work behind the scenes that you probably never saw. So I will thank the staff, Jeremy, Laura, Brandy, Carrie, Cindy, Howard, and everyone for everything that they did to make sure that we could actually offer all of our services again. And obviously we look forward to offering them, you know, more like the way that you're used to having them delivered to you. So we appreciate the public's patience in that. You know, the other thing I'll say about 2020 is I don't think anybody questions the urgency of some of the challenges ahead of us. We talked, you know, obviously there is hope around the corner with COVID in terms of the vaccines, but I don't think anybody is under the illusion that we're done with this or other pandemics. We know that these things will be coming back again somehow. No one is under the illusion that climate change isn't a pressing concern for us to be addressing. And I think there's no question now that we need to redouble our efforts on that. That's one of the things that I hope to be able to think about this year when I'm no longer mayor. You know, I feel like I saw the best of a lot of people this year. A lot of people stepped forward to help their neighbors, to help the community. And I've said this before, but you know, just the little kind words I got from so many people along the way were really appreciated. And I'm relieved to be done with this year as mayor, but it's also reminded me that what we do is important. So thank you all. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to my colleagues in the council, all of our volunteers, and all of you in the public for your support this year. And I look forward to continuing to serve as a council member. Thanks.
Thanks. And I forgot Jeremy. Jeremy.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, Jeff, going back to when we first started talking about COVID, and I'm remembering a week in early March where I must have called you 157 times over the course of that period of time. And I just wanted to share my personal thanks. This year is unlike anything I think any of us will ever experience in government serving the public. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your your calming words in those times where it felt like we weren't going to be able to do the things that we wanted to do to keep people safe, to keep them informed, all of the issues that we've been working on. I will miss those conversations with you in that capacity. And I just want to say thanks. You've been so supportive of the staff through some very trying times over the last year. On behalf of everybody, that means the world to have that kind of support. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Before we move on to the consent agenda, I think we can all agree we are in a time of transition. And what does that mean for us here in PV as we begin to review our historic policies, our practices, our procedures to make sure that they're still timely, they're up to date, and they're equitable for all? For example, the consent agenda. Because the issues we are grappling with in 2020 are far more complex, our agendas are much longer. In order to be respectful of everyone in the virtual audience and to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak, we are going to treat everyone exactly the same and begin enforcing the 3-minute speaking rule, which, by the way, is standard practice at almost all, if not all, the city councils in the county, as well as the elected boards and commissions. Tonight, Jeremy will be watching the clock and let you know when your 3 minutes are coming to a close. However, in the future, we may actually use a timer on the screen. I know that at the PCE meetings, you use a timer on the screen. And I've been to a lot of meetings in which they do that. If the public feels they have more substantial comments to make than 3 minutes can contain, you are always welcome to write a letter and email it to the council or to reach out to any of us or to staff. Another change we're going to try out tonight, suggested by our very own town attorney, Jon Silver, is a new approach to the consent agenda. I will call for any public comment on the consent agenda. Council members may accept the public comments without pulling the item of concern, or they can ask to pull that item or one of their choosing. I will then ask the council if anyone wishes to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda, or if anyone wishes to take another action, such as pulling the item. Excuse me. If an item of concern to a public member is not pulled, the public member, again, is always free to follow up the next day with a staff or a council member. So in the future, public, if something catches your eye on the consent agenda and you have questions, please contact staff or council before the meeting. As for whether we will continue to take minutes in our curious hybrid verbatim manner, or whether we transition over to the more standard practice of general minutes that capture motions and the major substance of a discussion, that is a matter to be discussed on an agenda in the new year. In the meantime, I will pass on these tips from Cara. 1, if the public has corrections to the minutes, they should raise the corrections offline with Sharon Hanlon, the town clerk, before the meeting. Obviously, this does not apply to tonight's meeting. 2, since council meeting minutes are not intended to be verbatim minutes, corrections should be made when the substance of a discussion was inaccurately transcribed. 3, if the public wishes something to be added to the minutes, there is generally no need to do so. But again, please speak to Sharon before the meeting with your concerns. Having said all that, I will move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone in the public wish to, pardon me?
I'm sorry, through the chair, 2 members of the public raised their hands just as you were starting your comments. They may be related to saying something about the outgoing mayor. So we may want to call on them right now just to see if that's the case. And if it's not, we can move forward if that's okay.
Sure. I mean, okay, so I'll call on you if this is related to the outgoing mayor. Sure. If not, please let me make my statement before I discuss the consent agenda. Kristi Corley.
Sorry, that's a mistake.
Okay, thank you, Kristi.
Thank you. Mary Hufty.
I just wanted to thank Jeff and also Ann Wengert. I think Ann has been a voice of reason throughout her entire period of service, and I didn't get a chance to thank her when she at her original comments, and I think she's really been terrific in many, many ways, always supportive, even if she doesn't completely understand or isn't completely behind your agenda. She was always interested. So that's very helpful. And I wanted to thank Jeff for his service. I agree that his letters have been very helpful and relaxing and very helpful to the community at large. And I guess in that context, I just wanted to let you all know that PVNU was started really to help the council inform its decisions. And we hope that it will be a positive, that it'll feel in the future going on like it's a positive and something that will give you another set of ears to bounce your ideas off of, and that we can help you with doing research that's independent and community based. So I wanted to thank Jeff for his great, and also Sarah for their great races and their fair ante up in the election, but also just to say I think that Jeff has done a great job, and that I really appreciated it. And I only ran against him because I wanted other people to get a chance to run.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. Consent agenda. Does any member of the public wish to make comments on the consent agenda? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. To the council, does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, or does anyone wish to pull something from the consent agenda? No.
I have nothing to pull, and I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. So moved by Jeff, seconded by Craig. Discussion? All right, is Sharon still taking roll, Jeremy?
I am.
Okay, Jeremy, roll.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Wernickehoff,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Aye.
Mayor Dermott.
Aye. That passes. All right, moving on to item number 10. This is the discussion of the public right-of-way on Alpine Road at Corte Madera Road and the available options for designation as open space. Before I hand this over to Jeremy and Howard, I wanted to frame the procedure for you. After staff explains the background and the 4 different options, I will ask council if they have any questions. Then I will ask the public if they have any comments. Then I will close the public comment period and I will bring it back to the council, where we will discuss each of the 4 options separately and come to a decision. Jeremy, are you going to start this one?
I'm going to hand it over directly to Howard Young, Director of Public Works, for this presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the Town Council. I'll also want to announce that we have our consultant town land surveyor with us, James Renfro. So I'll start by going through a little background. I'll be presenting a report recommending to the Town Council consider presented options for an open space designation. So I'll go through some quick background on information, then review their options. And please, at any time, feel free to interrupt during the report. So in December 2019, the Town Council removed the road remnant from the list of possible properties presented by the Ad Hoc Committee on Town-Owned Properties. Per Town Council discussion, the intention was to designate the road remnant as open space and to have staff bring back a mechanism to do so, and to discuss some mechanics and implications of making such designation over the land. So I'm going to share my screen right now and go over a little bit of background here. So, and some existing conditions. So what's referred to the road remnant right here at Alpine and Corte Madera is not a separate lot or land parcel. Rather, it's an existing very wide area of right of way, town right of way. So this solid line here represents where the town right of way is currently. What was referred to as the road remnant is right here. So the town zoning map indicates that the area is bisected with two zonings. The zoning line comes down right about in here. So a part of this part is zoned residential estate 1 acre, and this part is zoned residential estate 2 acres. The general plan map is unclear of the official designation of this area, and I've attached it as attachment 3. More research will be needed to be done there. Adjacent to this right of way is Corte Madera School. This is a very old photo, but Corte Madera School is here. And this is what is known as the Frog Pond. This parcel here was provided to the town through the ranch development. So a little discussion about public right-of-ways. This is the public right-of-way here. And the public right-of-ways are accepted publicly and dedicated for the use of public transportation and utilities. As part of the street system, the general public and utilities may have some kind of interest in it. So staff also wants to note in the right-of-way, if you see the road right here is our road surface, Alpine road surface, that this parcel here is a private resident, and you can see that they own part of the road right here. And I wanted to point out that in the year 1893, there was a purchase and given to the county a road easement through this area. So potentially, if we didn't have this easement here, the road could have came through this way. So we'll jump into reviewing options now. The town attorney, the building and planning director, public works, and the consultant land surveyor coordinated to discuss available options to achieve the desired protection of the road remnant, and went through some general mechanics and implications for each option. A lot of detailed work is involved in this. So I have summarized for our discussion 4 options from easy to difficult. I'm not going to go into full detail of the options, but I'm just going to go over quickly. The first option is to adopt a resolution confirming the town's intent to utilize the public right-of-way portion of the road remnant for open space purposes. This one is the easiest option. It provides the town still the flexibility of using the right-of-way for road and utility purposes. The future, on this option though, future council action can modify the resolution. And so the second option here is amending the zoning ordinance and general plan to specifically clarify the road remnant only to be used for road and trails and open space purposes. Another similar option would be to consider an overlay or safe routes to school through the area. We don't have such a program right now. A program like that would have to be developed. Certainly option 2, the time involved to process the documents and even update the general plan could take between 4 and 36 months, and the allotted amounts shown on the report. We move to option 3, which is to provide an easement to the road remnant to a special district, such as the school district. This provides still some flexibility, but less flexibility because there's a third party involved. And the most stringent of the options, but provides the most degree of certainty for the residents, is to subdivide a lot, create a lot out of it. There are still concerns about that we have to research in to determine if a conveyable lot can be done or a legal lot can be made out of this. There are some zoning issues. There are general plan issues that need to be addressed. But this would be essentially creating a lot out of this area, and either granting it an open space easement to MROSD or Peninsula Open Space Trust. And once again, there needs to be some negotiation if this is the direction that we want to go. And still a lot of research needs to be done here. Staff also, so those are the 4 options that we want to discuss. I did share the concepts with the Open Space Acquisition Committee, Terry Lee, and also the previous chair and current member, Nona, also. So after directions provided, the staff can further investigate the options. It could be no options. It could be a combination of 1 or 2 options. But we're here to find out from the council which direction that you want to go. So I am here for any questions. And thank you very much.
And through the chair, if I may, the town staff, and I believe the council received, I'm aware of 3 letters to the full council and staff from Judith Murphy, from Jon Silver, and from Lenny Roberts from Committee for Green Foothills, indicating their support for options 1 and 2 together. But wanted that to say that for the public record. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Questions from my colleagues? John.
Yes, I have a few questions. First off, Howard, in your discussion section at the very beginning of your discussion, the last sentence talks about the public street system belonging to the general public, that there are a lot of departments, agencies who may be utilizing or have an interest in it. I understand that that's what you mean by that. Just want to sort of clarify. We're talking about possible storm drains that might be hidden in there, other pipelines or something. I mean, it seems that it's probably not a lot of issues that are hidden that we don't know about. Is that correct?
That could be an assumption. One could assume that from what we've seen, but no one can guarantee it until we start pulling the title reports, maybe calling a USA to find out what utilities are actually in there.
Right. Okay. So that involves a bit of cost to find out what's buried, if anything.
Right.
Okay. Then going down further, you talk about the possible need to use the right-of-way for road purposes or existing utilities. Occurs to me that since we have a 100-foot right-of-way coming all the way up the hill, that is, I would, again, and maybe it's an assumption, maybe that's going to be enough as it goes around the corner to keep a 100-foot right-of-way. Is that a reasonable assumption, or are there reasons you could think of that we would possibly need to have a wider right-of-way there?
So that's a good question. So what we have here, and these are proposed, this is something that we looked at the right-of-way as to, on Alpine Road heading towards the school, it's 90 feet. And going towards Willowbrook, it's 100 feet. That's about consistent with our right-of-way that we're comfortable with. That right-of-way will probably provide enough for utilities and any future bike lanes or bike ped projects in that area, or road widening. There is absolutely no plans right now or in the near future. We're just basically looking at way in the future, 30, 40, 50, 60 years from now.
Sure. Okay. Next question, in the next bullet point, you mentioned the potential annual maintenance costs. Wouldn't it be, and then again, you mentioned future costs to maintain as open space. So there's potential annual maintenance costs. I expect we're already paying some costs in maintenance as it sits as it is today. Isn't that right?
Well, we are mowing it once. Oh, I also forgot to mention there are trails through this area too. So we're going to maintain those trails as part of the right-of-way.
So those wouldn't change probably.
They would not unless there's new proposals. So what do we spend right now? We mow it once or twice a year, but I think the direction of where open space is going is that there's some kind of maintenance or different treatment than we've done so in the past. So I wanted to mention to the councils, if it's open space and if it's categorized with the rest of the open space, there may be different expectations from the Conservation Committee that equate to potential extra costs, such as a certain amount of weeding,
Sure.
certain amount of fire mitigation
Okay.
work.
Right. Okay. Next issue is down on their second option, when talking about amending the zoning ordinance or general plan. Would it be possible that somewhere, either maybe it would be in a separate resolution, I'm not sure how it would how it would work. This may be too much detail for the general plan or zoning ordinance, but would it be possible to specify that the current road alignment would remain the same as it is now, so that that wouldn't be an option to change it at a future date?
I would have to defer to the planning director on that, but I believe since there's no plan, I believe that can be the case. But once again, the general plan could be changed if needed, if a road need to be realigned. But I believe that could be the case in the general plan, that, you know, there is a description of the scenic corridor here and the roadway, and I believe it can be. But if I know the building and planning director, Laura, is here, and if I spoke out of terms, she can, let me know, Laura.
Okay. Okay, I've got a couple more questions to ask. On item 3, to provide an easement, that would, am I correct that that would require a survey but not parcelization?
Yes, we would, item 3, we would at least have to come up with some description of the easement. We wouldn't have to parcelize it. It was just some basic survey without a record of survey to provide some description to the third party.
Okay, okay. And then finally on item 4, let's see, creating separate lots of parcels for open space preservation. That would require a zoning change, because otherwise we would have to, we'd have an issue with the current zoning creating a non-compliant lot. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes, correct.
Okay, okay. Okay, I think that's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, Craig.
Yeah, I have a couple questions that are probably more of a legal technical nature. Well, actually, the first one is more general. For option 2, it requires amending the zoning ordinance and the general plan. Does it need both of those, or could you do, is it an either or both? In other words, in order to do the zoning change, do you need to change the general plan and vice versa, or can you do either of them alone?
I can take that one. Hi, it's Laura Russell, Planning and Building Director, and then maybe Kara can chime in as well. An important concept is that the zoning map in the general plan should be consistent. So as we've discussed on this property, the general plan map is challenging to interpret. So we would have to make an interpretation of the general plan map, ensure that we understand the application of the greenways and how that's applied. I think it is likely we would need both a zoning map amendment and a general plan amendment, but that's one of the technical questions we would need to answer.
Okay, thanks. And then the second question, and this is maybe more of a legal question, is for options 3 and 4. So options 1 and 2, I see how those operate. Options 3 and 4 seem like they would be taking away a property right currently enjoyed by the general public. And I just wanted to know what that process is like and whether we have the authority to do that. Right now, the public has all kinds of rights to pass through here, and utility companies have rights. And even if they haven't exercised those rights, they still own, they enjoy those rights. So we'd be removing some of those rights. And I'm curious what the mechanism for that would be.
So we would have to relinquish the right of way. So the right of way was provided to the county, which was then provided to us. but the public process we'd have to come to the council to relinquish the right of way, to give up the right of way.
And is that something that the council has the authority to do by ourselves, or is that something that we need higher power to authorize?
Well, from what I understand, go ahead, Kara.
I can answer from a legal perspective. The way you relinquish that right, there is a process in the Street and Highways Code, I believe, and you go through an abandonment process, and the council needs to make a finding that the right-of-way is no longer needed for right-of-way uses and also for utility uses as well. And if that's the case, if you can make that finding, then state law allows the town to actually formally abandon the right-of-way. And then it comes down to then what happens with that, the property rights that apply in this situation. Since the town owns it in fee simple, you would just be relinquishing the ability to use it as a right-of-way. If it were to be owned in easement, what happens under state law is then the underlying property owner is able to use the property without the burden of the easement.
Okay, and so then in this case, we would basically have all of this property, which currently has a right-of-way on it, and we would reduce the right-of-way to just that portion that we wanted to keep as having right-of-way, and the rest of it would be an unparcelized piece of property that would be treated according to how we describe it in our general plan. I just, the concept of a piece of property that's not a parcel that isn't a right-of-way, I'm not sure what that is. Is there such a thing as unparcelized property that's not a right-of-way?
Right. So it is a very awkward sort of animal. You don't typically have it. But there are cases where you have a parcel that has, you know, an easement over part of it. And sometimes a parcel is zoned actually, you know, one zoning in part of it, and the other zone, a completely separate zoning in the other half of it. So you do have these types of parcels out there. It's a difficult, it would be a difficult parcel to develop for that reason. And that's certainly why we're finding these options are very difficult to administer because of all of the different factors in play here.
Okay, thank you.
May I add something?
Yes, James.
To kind of go along with Laura there, your idea of reducing the right-of-way through that portion for only that is going to be used for, you know, your right-of-way and utilities. The abandonment process doesn't parcelize the land; it abandons the rights of way. And since you do own it in fee, that would generally go through the process of reversion, which then it's a kind of an odd concept. You go back in time and you find out who owned the land originally. And as the town abandons that portion, it reverts to the previous or land owner. So you're not parcelizing under that mechanism.
So the previous landowner would be, I mean, there what
you kind of have to go back as to who owned it when it was created. It's kind of a research project. You find out who owned the land when it was granted to the city, and it generally reverts back to that.
So we would lose ownership potentially if we took option 3.
If you abandon the right of way, it would revert back to whomever owned it before, and you would lose it. It would not become a parcel.
Okay, thank you. I think that's an important important fact that was not in the staff report. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, are there other questions from the council?
I have a question. I guess as I read through this, I'm just trying to figure out what the downside of option 1 is, if it's the fastest and least expensive route. What would be the downside?
I can take that. This is Jeremy. The downside, I don't know if I put it as a downside, but what I would say is that the options 1 and 2 in particular are only as permanent as any future council action. So the council could, under options 1 and 2, make changes, rescind the resolution, pass a new resolution, change the general plan or zoning to have a different use. And that's true for all manner of property in town. And we wanted to present a range of options that were not like that. So 3 and 4 are more difficult. And, based on the community involvement last year, I think that there was some interest in finding an option that was the most protective, but I think is what we're sort of showing is that the most protective are also ones that are probably the least likely to sort of occur or very onerous. It's a bit of a quandary, but that's what I think that if there's a downside, that would be the primary issue.
Do you have any other questions, Sarah?
No, thank you.
Okay, Jeff, did you have any questions?
Not right now, no.
The only question I have is, if we chose 1 and 2, how would that work? Jeremy?
How would that work, like timing wise?
Yeah, I mean, one is quick, easy, and it's cheap. So would 2 offer another layer of protection? And I mean, could that be done when we do the general plan update in the next 2 years?
Yes, and in fact, that would be our recommendation, is that the council could pass a resolution option 1 fairly quickly, and then direct staff as part of the general plan update to include essentially option 2. We would not recommend opening up the general plan and map for this particular purpose. There's a lot of other reasons why we're going to be proposing that. We've already proposed that to the council. And it makes a lot more sense to do it all at one swing.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions before I look at questions from attendees?
Madam Mayor, if I could just add one additional point to that response. So in terms of general plan updates, there is also a restriction on how many times the council can amend the general plan. You can only do that 2 times a year. And so typically what we advise is that you hold on to any general plan amendments and do them all at one period of time.
Okay.
In case.
Cara, you just got muted for some reason.
Cara?
So, yes.
Oh,
So
now we can hear you.
Yes, in case a need arises, such as, the need to amend a housing element or something like that, you want to be able to have that option available for you.
Okay, understood. All right, are there any attendees who would like to make comments? And if so, raise your hand and then identify yourself by name for the record. Helen Quinn.
Helen Quinn, 10 Bearpaw, Portola Valley. I think the set of options here is the staff has done a good job laying it out and laying out good options. And it seems to me that option 1 plus option 2 is the best option going forward. It doesn't get into all the complications of abandoning an easement or anything like that, but it gives us as a community assurance that we know that this council and hopefully the upcoming general plan have said the purpose of this land is either for the road or for open space use and trails and utilities when necessary. And so I am suggesting to the council that, as the letters have said, that would be the best option for this piece of land. And it would meet the need for making clear that this is the desire of this council going forward. Because I think what's been happening in the past is these things have been sort of expressed, but then haven't been put into the record as a decision of the council. By this council putting that into the record of the decision, any future change then has to be reasoned on the basis of why are we changing from what's now. So I think you have the right option here to move forward in a way that's sufficiently strong to reassure us that this land is going to be held by this town as open space.
Okay, thank you. Betsy Morgan-Thaler.
Thank you, new mayor. Thank you, council. I wanted to start by thanking Howard, Jeremy, Laura, and our council for the expansive view of the options on the table and the level of precision that I truly appreciate. I think of myself as a detail person, and Howard, you knock my socks off. Here, the level of detail that you and attention to detail that you brought to this was really admirable. And sometimes I wondered this year what was taking so long, and I can see now. And so thank you for that commitment that I know has backup amongst the full parties here. I want to come out as well as saying I like things to be no more complex than absolutely necessary, and not simpler than they need to be either. And that is why I support both options 1 and option 2, because it strikes 2 important notes. They work together in tandem like 2 hands clapping. The one hand is there is an item here in option 1 that is actionable tonight and followed up with the cooperation of the important parties of a couple of our committees. It could be executed soon. And option 2 adds the all-important longevity. The first option 1 brings in the money that has been in wait, the commitment that many town members made for open space, Frog Pond, the larger Frog Pond open space, a commitment that numbers over $100,000. That could be tremendously useful in the spring when we have soft ground and lots of work to do. And there's such a narrow window that I want this option 1 to bring in the money to do this work that's committed to maintenance. And then option 2, the longevity. I think after the hours and hours that so many of us, all of you here tonight, have committed to this, it's worthy of that extra level. And the pair of them together, I have a strong sense that I'm speaking for more than just myself, that it would bring all of us to the table. And I am here to applaud the energy and the commitment that you're showing in having done this level of work. So thank you so much for engaging the community. I do think that we work together. I do think we work together, and I think we're in a really good place right now. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Betsy. Dana.
Unmute. There we go. I'm sitting here with close to 700 signatures supporting the designation of this land, and I believe Jon Silver has another 500 on his online petition. Needless to say, everyone is pretty excited and enthusiastic to see this move forward. In an attempt not to be redundant and say the same thing everybody else is. I want to say that wholeheartedly, I support and agree with Lenny's letter, and I hope you all had a chance to read it. And I am grateful for her wisdom. Once option 1 is in place, I can begin to collect the pledges. And that's it. Thank you. It will be fun to see in the spring if the wildflowers we planted come up next spring. And now if it would only rain, so the frogs can serenade us and sing some of us to sleep. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you to the frogs. Valerie?
Valerie, you may need to.
Okay, here we go. Sorry. Yes, I'd just like to back up what Betsy and Dan has just said, that it's a wonderful, magical place. I've walked through there a lot. I live on Echo Lane, just down the hill from there. And the trails through there are wonderful. I'd like to see it stay as town open space, mainly because I was a little alarmed by option number 4, because both Post and Mid-Penn tend to close things off for years. Look at the Hawthorns. I mean, it's how many more years is it going to stay closed off to us for hiking in there? And I don't want to see that happen. So I think options 1 and 2 are our best bet to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valerie. Nona?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. First of all, thank you for the chance to address the town council. I had a long day and I did submit a letter, but it probably didn't get to your inboxes till 4:59. So if I may, I'll read my letter just because it is part of the record now. So thank you for returning to the question of open space protection for the Alpine Road remnant. And thank you to the town staff for outlining options to achieve that protection. Like others who have spoken, I support options 1 and 2 combined. And I'd like to offer 3 comments, 2 of which really haven't been mentioned before. My first comment is the background section of the report states that the road remnant, quote, is an existing extra wide section of town public road right-of-way, end quote. But option 1 proposes a resolution, quote, to utilize the public right-of-way portion of the road remnant for open space purposes, end quote. I think the council's resolution, if you adopt option 1, should be explicit that it pertains to the entire road remnant. And so my point here really is total clarity in the language. My second point is that although we all agree that permanent protection for the road remnant cannot be guaranteed, there should be a guarantee of the council's intent via explicit language and math. And so I think that if you do adopt option 2, I think it should entail amending both the town zoning map and the general plan map in ways that are unambiguous and in agreement with one another about your intent to protect the road remnant. And my third point is that I'd like to urge you to go a little further. I'd like to urge you to strengthen both options 1 and 2 by recognizing in the council resolution and in the general plan when it's revised that the road remnant is not just an aesthetic element of the scenic corridor, but also a buffer element for Frog Pond open space. And so that if there is a future council decision about using the road remnant in some other way, I think it should require some kind of determination of what the potential effects of that would be on the Frog Pond environment. So in sum, I found the staff report very, very helpful as a first step in the council's open space goals for the road remnant. And I thank you for the chance to comment.
Thank you, Nona. Deborah DiFilippo.
Hi. Yes, I'm Deborah DiFilippo. I moved into Portola Valley in the ranch in 1986. First of all, I just want to thank everyone that serves us on council. I don't attend or listen into many meetings, and wow, the amount of work and research that you all do and the time that you're spending in our service, I just have a lot of gratitude. So thank you all. I would also agree with everyone, and please ask that we adopt options 1 and 2. As previously stated, they do work in tandem to preserve the land. And also, I also urge you to strengthen that, to preserve it always as open space. It's not only for me as a member of the ranch that I love that just serene view, which is why we decided to move here. When we drive into the ranch, we don't have a view from our home, but we do have that view when we walk to the Frog Pond and to Windy Hill, and it's gorgeous. But you know, it's not really about us. What I think the bottom line is, as I think about this, is it's about our children. My 2 sons, Dave and Dan, are now 23 and 32. They're born and raised in Portola Valley. And I don't know, I hope everyone has spent time at Corte Madera School. I think the beauty of that unobstructed view, the serenade of the frog pond, the ability of the children to go to that frog pond, that I'm worried if the remnant is an open space, that frog pond will be disturbed. I think that it's that unobstructed, beautiful, serene view and that open space that I know for my sons and my sons' friends has taught them to love nature and to want to protect our environment. And so I think it's really, really important to keep this land as open space. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Gary Morgenthaler.
Sorry, muted. So Mayor Derwin and council members, I wanted to thank all of you for what I think is a careful, detailed, meticulous, good faith effort to outline options, delineate those options for the community, and be responsive to both the concerns of the community and to provide options that move us forward as a community. So again, this is Gary Morgenthaler. We live at 4678 Alpine. Ours is the property that is traversed by Alpine Road, which enjoys an easement from 1893. Howard informs us, we had informed him of the same previously and offered an easement in the case that one did not exist. Outgoing council member Ann Derwin spoke to the open space ethos of Portola Valley that has drawn all of us into this community. Preserving that, I think, is a priority for all of us. I am here to speak in favor of options 1 and 2. I believe that that reflects what the community understood to be the will of the town council at its December 11th meeting in 2019. I think these are very straightforward, actionable, good faith proposals that reflect both those decisions, the will of the town council to implement them, and is responsive to our community and our community's concerns. So I commend you all for doing this. We speak as a community, I speak personally in support of those options and encourage you to move forward with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Are there any other attendees who would like to speak? Oh, I see some more hands. Angela Hay.
I'm not quite clear about the difference between an open space easement and a conservation easement. Should we be looking at a conservation easement as well as open space easement?
Can staff address that question?
Yes,
Howard?
Angela, yes. So based on discussions in the minutes, the council minutes from December 2019, through the open space committee and the other and the conservation committees that were involved, what was committed to was the open space designation and not a conservation easement.
Yeah, so my question is, shouldn't we be going further if we're trying to conserve space for the frogs? Maybe along Nona may understand more about this.
Well, the open space easement is going to will be defined via the resolution as to what we want on that lot.
There's something that slightly bothers me. Bedwell Park at the end of Marsh Road is a sort of designated open space permanently, and I'm not sure that we're dedicating enough permanence to it as an open space. I don't really understand the difference. Maybe our lawyer can tell us the difference, but there's certainly sort of strengths of open space. It's not just one level of open space. There's different levels. If you say an open space easement, you've got different, whether it's got conservation in it or not, when do we define the exact details, I guess?
Cara, can you speak to this?
Sure. So I think we're getting mixed up in terms of easement versus general plan designation. So you have a piece of property that is designated as open space in the general plan. That means that that property can only be used for open space, but it's a land use designation. A conservation easement is a tool that is used to preserve property as essentially as open space or in its natural state. And it's a legal mechanism that is used to actually sort of implement the general plan designation. So in terms of, Bedwell Bayfront Park that you referred to, that is it's an open space park that is owned by the city, and the general plan designation is open space, and it can only be used as a park. And since it's owned by the city and operated as a park, there's really no need for implementing a further conservation easement in that situation that you pointed out. And the staff report talks about using a conservation easement tool to further protect this piece of property, but there are some hurdles with that. And some members of the public noted that sometimes if you are to give a conservation easement to other nonprofits, that they do take the land out of service for a while in order to bring it up to certain maintenance levels, et cetera. And so there are other hurdles in terms of implementing this through a conservation easement. So I hope that answers it.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Kristi Corley.
Yes, thank you for the thorough report. I'm just wondering if PVSD had any comments on this. I do know that the Corte Madera group uses it for their mile run, and it's used annually at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year in a PE class. So they are using those trails. And it's been used for many years. And I'm just wondering what the principal and what the school is saying regarding this.
Jeremy, do you have the answer to that question?
We have not communicated directly with the school, but we wanted to provide council with potential options before we had those kinds of conversations and received direction.
Okay, I'd just be curious what they might say. I am for open space and for the Corte Madera children to continue to use that for their mile run. And it's quite a nice piece of property, and I'd like to see it remain as open space. Does the zoning and ordinance and changing the general plan, is it only for that corner, or does it affect the whole scenic corridor in any way?
As before the council, this is only for the road remnant, not for other portions of right of way or other property.
Does it start a precedence of what we might do in the future with other pieces of land on Alpine Road?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. I am going to close the public hearing and bring this back to the council. We could go through each option and talk about it, or if council members already have an option they prefer and/or a suite of options, we could go that way as well. Craig, do you have a suggestion?
Before we go into the discussion, I have in further digesting what James said earlier about this reversion concept. I'm just curious as to whether options 3 and 4 are even possible. Can we grant an easement on a piece of property that does not belong to us? If we first have to remove the public right of way, then the land reverts to its previous former owner, then we would not be able to grant an easement. Is that correct? So options 3 and 4 are not options.
If you were to abandon the right of way and revert to the previous owners, you would not have rights to the property any longer.
Okay, so really only options 1 and 2 of the options in the report are possibilities.
Well, like Howard stated, the zoning in those areas are 1 acre and 2 acre, and the road remnant is only approximately 29,000 square feet. So it is a non-compliant area if you were thinking of doing parcelizing to try and preserve it in that manner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's talk about, pardon me?
Question, Marianne?
Yes, John.
Sorry. Let me just pursue that issue just briefly. As I understood it, we could parcelize that corner, change the zoning and make it into its own part, a separate parcel, parcelize it. Basically creating using item number 4 or option number 4 without having to go through the having it revert back to a previous owner. Is that correct?
But I think we could grant the easement without first removing the public right of way, in which case it would revert.
No, you were talking about abandoning the right of way. If you abandon the right of way, then it does revert. If you parcelize it, then you're compliant. You have to be compliant with the MAP Act and your current zoning.
Right.
Changing the zone from 1 acre to 2 acre is very difficult because you would be trying to create a spot zone, and it would be probably quite difficult to come up with findings to allow that type of high density zoning in an area that is not already currently high density.
But it's theoretically an option.
A very, very low probability one, yes. It would be very difficult to make those findings.
Let's not take it off the table completely, though.
Yeah.
Now I have a follow-up. Oh, sorry, John. If you
no, go ahead.
I have a follow-up question, which is if this would be a spot zone, it would be very hard to create a zone that applies to only 2/3 of an acre here. So given that's surrounded by lower density, is option 2 even an option? Can we change the zoning map to apply to just this 2/3 of an acre parcel? Or non-parcel? Sorry, if we don't parcelize it, can we create a 2/3 acre zone that applies just to this piece of land?
your planning director probably could answer this more eloquently, but in option one, resolving that it remain in open space, which it is already part of your scenic corridor, and resolving to amend your zoning and a general plan to add further protections, it would most probably apply to a larger area, not just the road remnant. There are areas towards the town and further to the south that are outside of your traffic element, your 90 and 100-foot rights of way, that these overlay zones would most likely apply. So you'd get more benefit, more bang for your buck.
So we'd have a broader zoning that would cover not just this, but we could say it's everything that's outside of the 100 feet along our scenic corridors, or something along those lines that would pick this up, but might pick up one or two other things as well.
Yes.
Well, and if we were going to undertake this as part of a general plan amendment, comprehensive amendment, then we would look at this more comprehensively, and it would be appropriate to designate certain areas as open space areas. And we wouldn't be running against any of these issues related to spot zoning, because there'd be clear policy intent that was behind that. And we could create, the logic and the analysis for it. And I would say that there may still be possibilities. I mean, not at all to disagree. I agree with the points that James is making, but we haven't considered all of the possibilities. We didn't want to go to that level of research before we got direction from you, because it really is a lot of work to think through the very specifics of this. So I would leave on the table that it is possible but challenging to create a zoning map amendment that would be in the very immediate term. But it would be, I think, very appropriate and not particularly challenging to undertake it as part of the general plan amendment process.
Craig, does that answer your questions?
I think so. I mean, my big concern is really that we would commit to something tonight, or that the public would think we were committing to something tonight that turns out later to be technically impossible. And so I'm just trying to make sure that we're ruling out the options that we won't legally be able to do. And yes, I get your point, Laura, about working through all of the details, because there will be a lot to work through, which is indicated, I think, in the timeline estimates. But I just wanted to make sure we don't get, a year into working on this and then find out, oops, nope, it's not possible. And then everybody thought we were going to parcelize it and put an easement on it, and it turns out you can't. So I'm just trying to at least walk a little bit down that path to make sure that if we say, okay, let's go with options 1 and 2, and option 2 involves creating a zone and updating the general plan, that will be possible to do. And in your opinion, Laura, that would be possible to do, especially if we do it as part of the general plan overhaul, that it would be relatively easy to fit into that.
Yes, I think relatively easy to fit into an overall general plan amendment. And if you wanted us to do additional research on the feasibility of doing the zoning code amendment in the more near term, then we certainly could undertake that research.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what we're looking at tonight are 4 options. We can choose 1, 2, 3, or 4, or we can choose a combination. Starting with option 1, how do people feel?
Can I just say something? I feel like there's kind of a consensus among all of us, including the public, that 1 and 2 is a good approach. That it sort of sufficiently assuages concerns about our commitment to this, but also are the most feasible of the 4 options. That collectively 1 and 2 are the most feasible. I feel like I feel like 1 and 2 is probably, I would start there and ask if anyone has reasons to move away from that, or eliminate 1 or 2, or there's reason to include 3 or 4. And it sounds like there's ample reason not to include 3 or 4. Does anyone think 1 without 2 or 2 without 1 is preferable?
I'm not completely opposed to option 2. Option 1, I've been supportive of since we first had this conversation a year ago. And I thought it was expedient to do it then. I think option 2, we can do it. I'm not really convinced that it adds a lot of value beyond what option 1 does, given that it could be changed again by any future council. I suppose if it's embedded in the general plan and the zoning code, you would have to go through a slightly more substantial process in order to change it again in the future if some future council wanted to do that. But anything we do, a future council can undo. In that regard, the zoning and general plan change does not really provide any protection that the resolution doesn't provide, other than a slightly more cumbersome process for future council to go through if they did want to change it. So given that, and given the time and cost that would need to go into figuring out all these technical details of exactly how to create the zone and how to integrate it to the general plan, I'm not sure that that effort would be worth the cost and the staff time that would have to go into it. But I'm willing to support it if everybody else thinks that that's the best way to go. And as I said, the resolution, I'm 100% behind.
Okay, so Craig, you are a strong number 1, and you will support a 1 and 2 combination if your fellows are leaning in that direction, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and Jeff, you are a strong 1 + 2.
Yep.
Okay. John.
Yeah, I think I lean a little more toward Craig's position. I could be happy with doing a strong resolution, making it really specific and clear. I do appreciate the value of making it more complex to undo for some unknown future council. I have no doubt about this council sticking to its promises, but I don't know. I agree with Craig. I don't know how much that would actually, how much of a barrier that would create to making the change that we don't want to have happen. So anyway, I would definitely go for number 1, maybe number 2 if I could be convinced that it would be a not too onerous a process and would result in a much better result.
Okay, thank you, John. You and Craig are of like minds. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
Sarah.
I also agree with Craig and John. I guess my point of view from the outset was that number 1 was kind of the, it's the path of least resistance. It hits the goal with, the least expensive way and the quickest way. I guess I'm just, how do you quantify what number 2 would potentially double the amount of time and the amount of the cost? And so does it give that much more security around, how do we quantify what the value of that is? So I'm open to number 2 as well. But to me, it feels like number 1 is sufficient.
Okay, I tend towards Jeff. I like number 1 and number 2 because, and I think we have to think about future councils because I think future council could be very different from what you're looking at here tonight. It shows our intent that we really wanted to try to protect this piece of property, and it would make it harder to change that. Now, if we did it as part of the general plan update, would it be that onerous and that expensive? Laura. If we did number 2 as part of the general plan update.
We have not gone through the exercise of really deciding the scope of the general plan update. We have that as a task that we're going to undertake. If this council sets it as a priority to do this, and we know that we're going to, I don't think it would be extremely onerous. I think it would be appropriate for the town to undertake an evaluation of the current map, of the greenways designation, and ensuring that the town's values are expressed in the map. And so we would be doing much of that work anyway. So I don't think this would add a significant addition of work as long as we're assuming that we're incorporating that into the scope of what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
And to be clear, when I say 1 + 2, I do assume that 2 would be part of that larger process,
Yes,
which I also feel strongly we need to undertake in the near future.
I agree with you. Craig.
So what about this then? What if we do 1 and we ask staff to bring us the resolution as soon as it can be drafted and act on that, and we essentially leave number 2 on the table where we're not firmly committing to do it, because I still have some concerns around how it will actually play out when the technical aspects of it come into play as we go through and revise the general plan and look at what the zone would actually include and how you would even define what uses are allowed on that piece of land, just other details that are going to be messy and they will take time. Even if we're considering them as part of a broader general plan, it's going to be a fair amount of work to capture what we want to capture for whatever this zone designation is. So I would say let's firmly commit to 1 and let's leave 2 on the table. And as we go through and do the general plan update, we can begin investigating it. And if it turns into a rat's nest, we can back out and say, well, we tried, but it's just technically too hard.
First Jeremy and then Jeff.
Just to make a comment, and I think I'm saying the same thing as Craig just did, but maybe in a little different take. If the council tonight can direct us to do the resolution, that can come back fairly quickly. And I think the council tonight could direct us to look at this as part of the general plan update. And that might be a more affirmative way of saying what I think Craig was saying, that we've been instructed by the council to take a look at this, and as part of that update, come back with reporting to say, this is what we've discovered. We find it to be relatively easy, or, we had to do all this research and this is what we found out and it's not going to work out. So that, I think that would make a lot of sense. I mean, because the general plan update is not happening anytime soon either. So we've got some time.
When might that happen? 2 years? In 2 years? That 2022?
Oh, I suspect it'll be later than that. I'm sure we'll be doing some work in the calendar year 2022. We may even do some work next year early on. The first work that's going to happen around the general plan update is related to the housing element, but that's a separate act because it's on a different time frame than the general plan. But yeah, the general plan update is, just to be conservative, is going to take 2 to 3 years. That's what normally takes in most communities. You have multiple meetings. You usually have some kind of ad hoc resident committee that provides guidance to the council. We're talking 30 or 40 meetings over the course of a couple of years, and that's not something that I would anticipate us starting in any real significant way for a while.
Okay, someone had a hand up. Who was that, Jeff?
That was me. Can the resolution contain a reference to the upcoming general plan amendment and just state our intention to include this as part of a larger general plan amendment looking at open space treatment of comparable parcels, comparable land, not parcels?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I would be fine with that.
And can it be written strong enough to capture our commitment to trying to do this?
Yeah, I think there's many ways to capture the sentiment of the council and what the residents are looking for who've come to the meeting tonight and opined in the past. Absolutely.
Okay. Sarah, were you just scratching your head or raising your hand?
I was scratching my head.
I think John has his hand
Also
up.
telling somebody to leave the room.
John, you're really dark. It's hard to see you. You're blending into those trees in the background. Yes, I know.
I know. I just wanted to say, if we can include that in the resolution and look at it as part of as our general plan update, I think that makes perfect sense. And let's make it specific and strong enough language so that so people know we mean it.
Okay, does someone want to attempt a motion?
Well, at this point, we're just making a recommendation.
Oh, are we just, so we
Right,
don't
we're
need to do a
looking
motion?
for direction, right?
Or we don't need a motion.
We're looking for direction to the staff to bring back a resolution, correct?
Yeah, Cara, I don't think that requires a motion unless you think that that makes it a little stronger.
She's researching.
You're on mute, Cara.
Now she's talking to no one.
I was looking at the staff recommendation here.
It's just direction.
Consider options, yes. So, and you know, as long as you're all here and on the same page, it might be nice for the community to go away with a formal motion directing us to prepare a resolution that implements your intent expressed here.
Okay, who would like to make that? Craig?
So moved.
Second.
Need to state that motion.
I
so specific.
I move to direct staff to draft a resolution capturing the sense of the council discussion we just had.
Okay, and just, I would like it a little more specific, Cara, like what could we say in there that's a little more specific?
To adopt a resolution expressing the council's intent to designate the road remnant piece as open space, use for open space, and further to express the council's intent to examine this general plan and zoning change amendments in connection with the town's general plan update process.
I like that better. Someone capture that?
We're being recorded, so
we're recording.
You'll just go back and listen.
Okay. Yep.
All right, is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
John is seconding. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Jeremy, roll call.
Councilmember Alves.
Aye.
Councilmember Warnikoff.
Aye.
Councilmember Richards.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes.
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Thank you. I hope we handled this one sufficiently for the audience. We really are listening to you and we are trying to grant what you wish. And now I think we should take a 5-minute break.
And Ms. Mayor, before we go to the break, I did see that a member of the public had raised their hand while the council was deliberating. And I just wanted to mention that once the public comment is closed, we do not take public comment. So apologies to whoever raised their hand.
Yes, again, you are free to give us a call or send an email. Thank you. And with that, we'll take a 5-minute break. Let's move on to item number 11. That is a report from the town manager, a wildfire building code update. And Jeremy tells me this is simply an update for the council of the work that's being conducted for the wildfire building code amendments that were recommended by the Wildfire Prep Committee and adopted by the council a year ago. There is no action required other than accepting the report. Correct, Jeremy?
Correct.
So take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor Derwin and members of the council. As you recall, and it's in the attachment, the town council adopted a number of recommendations from the Wildfire Preparedness Committee approximately a year ago. And progress on implementing both what we're calling the short term, those are the implemented in calendar year 2020, and those medium term that we would start working on this year, but would be implemented in future years, is going very well. One of the primary elements of the short-term recommendations listed on page 169 is 1.0, which is a variety of fire reach code updates that would harden a home. They're actually similar to item 2I, which are for existing homes, encouraging them to do similar work. The work on this is going very well so far. The town has been working with a retired building official whom we found to be quite informed on these issues and has been as I said, working very hard. We'd hoped, per the council's request and recommendation, would be before you by the end of the calendar year, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get there. It does need to go to at least one of the two commissions prior to coming to this body, and simply run out of time, to be honest. So I just wanted to take this opportunity by agendizing this to let you know that obviously it still remains a priority for staff to move forward, and we're very hopeful that in the first couple months of the coming year that we're able to get this through the commissions to the council. So that is still our course. We have a very good draft, but as I said, it's really scheduling them at the commission level. And as you all know, and I think residents know, the commissions have been working on a lot of different issues. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. But as I said, we're hopeful in the first couple months of the new year, those will be done and back in front of you. Thank you.
Are there questions?
Question.
Craig, and then John.
I have just one. I'm curious what multi-pane tempered glass windows with mesh screens are. Does that mean just tempered glass instead of regular glass, and multi-pane meaning like panes for energy efficiency? And is a mesh screen is like an insect screen, or is it a different kind of a screen?
Laura?
It's skylights with screens. That's only for skylights. They recommend screens for skylights to keep the glass from falling on you. So it's an interior.
Oh, on the inside. Got it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But the glass, it looks just like a normal window. It's not like differently opaque or anything like that. Okay. Thank you.
John.
Yeah, I don't want to make things life more difficult, but there's something I brought up earlier, and that is on 2I, where we encourage retrofit in existing homes. We're recommending non-combustible or IPE decking or fencing. IPE is my understanding is really not a sustainable product. It's a tropical hardwood that grows into these massive trees. It takes them years and years and years, and they grow like 1 per 20 acres or something like that. They have to go through and rip down all these other trees to get to them. I really hate to be in the position of recommending those. So,
yeah, and thanks for reminding us, John. We have that included in our in further conversations. This is a reflection of what was initially adopted, so I wasn't changing anything here.
Okay.
But we're aware of those concerns.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Anybody else have any questions? And we don't need to, oh, let me see. Does the, excuse me.
We're not acting on this one, no.
Do any, I know.
Oh, sorry.
Any attendees wish to make a comment about this agenda item? No. Okay, we are not commenting. We are not directing. We are merely accepting. So there is no motion, correct, Cara?
That's correct.
Great. Okay, we will move on to item number 12, which is our study session, budget session number 1. And again, Jeremy tells me that the staff is asking us to consider as we move toward trend analysis and forecasting in our budget process. If there's anything specific we want them to look at, discuss, or if there are any budgetary areas we want explored, etc. Jeremy?
Thank you, Mayor Derwin, members of the council. This is an opportunity for the council to provide some guidance on our continuing evolution of the finance department. As I laid out on red page 170, there's been significant improvements in the department over the last few years. It's actually quite extraordinary when you look at a list of this ilk and see how much has actually been done. And mention as well the Finance Committee's important role in making recommendations and coming up with their own independent ideas. The next step for us is to implement a process where we incorporate trend analysis and forecasting for our budget. And it's something that we hope to include and plan to include for the FY 21-22 budget cycle. The staff report, we're asking a few things. One, it's sort of one of those 100,000-foot questions. Is there anything that over the course of the years that we've been talking about these issues that you'd like us to concentrate on as it relates to trend analysis, forecasting, or otherwise? Any other tools that you think would be complementary as it relates to what we're going to be implementing in the next year? Secondly, are there areas of focus that you have some concerns about that we could either bring forward in a future budget study session, or some of the examples that we provided, if these are areas of appropriate focus? As I stated on, see, that's on red page 172 at the top there under numbers 1 and 2. It seems to us that the bare minimum on any kind of trend analysis and forecasting is going to encompass issues like our sheriff's contract, software growth, property tax changes, capital improvements, and salaries and benefits. These are big areas, right? These are our largest expenditures and revenue sources, depending on which category we're looking at. So there's some obvious places we think that are sort of the foundational for that future review. And just to pull one out for the sake of the conversation, you can see in the middle of red page 172, we went back and just looked at the contracts over almost 20 years for the sheriff's office, and you can see how much they've grown. I mean, it's pretty incredible. So we just wanted to open it up and get some sense from you if we're on the right track. We think we are. And if we're missing anything here, and how you would like some future budget study sessions to go. If you think it would be useful, for example, for us to come back with a couple of these items that we've identified, say the sheriff's contract and the construction traffic road fee, with a further level of analysis, if you'd like us to do that at the finance committee level, or anything else really, the issues that we don't know or that we've missed. I hope that's helpful. I know it's a little nebulous, but it was intended to be nebulous. We did that at the finance committee to mixed success. I think they wanted more examples. So we did highlight some of those tonight, but would love to open it up and hear what you have to say about what we've written and where you'd like us to continue to go. Thank you.
Questions, Sarah?
So I'm new to all these reports and systems, so some of this may be there and I just haven't really figured it out yet. But I think, to me, definitely, obviously, trend analysis, particularly, I know it's hard because you guys have moved systems, but year over year trend analysis, including some of the back years, not just looking forward, so you could see the actual trends. That's one thing that's been, as a new person, kind of hard to get a sense of. And then I think the other thing that to me feels like is missing is a top line report that pulls all of the different elements together, where you can kind of pull out some key performance metrics to be looking at on an ongoing basis. And along those lines, I was wondering, because this is a new tool and something that I'm assuming a lot of other municipalities use, did you guys look at like best practice reports that other, like-sized, towns are using, or were there kind of canned reports that come out of it that are the top line kind of strategic performance metric type of reporting versus just like the data, so to speak?
Yeah. Through the chair, if I could. So the first, I think, is a really important point that Sarah made, is that having all of the data from previous budget cycles and actuals in one place that can be manipulated in a non-time consuming fashion. That's why the council supported the purchase of some of the software that we bought in recent years. A few of you have seen me do this before, but for instance, here's a budget from 2003-04. This doesn't exist anywhere else other than my hand. And one of the projects that I've taken on over this month is to take what is approximately 7,500, 8,000 individual data points, put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then get that loaded up into OpenGov so we can start that process. But we need to start somewhere. So that's one of the things we're doing. Performance metrics is an interesting concept. When I worked for the County of San Mateo as a budget analyst, we had hundreds of performance measures. It's not something that we have currently in our budget book, and I would certainly recommend it as a longer term goal. But we haven't undertaken any serious effort here to start to think about what those would look like as it relates to budget or what I would say program performance. But it is something that's sort of in the back of our heads is a next step after we implement some of these other pieces. Best practices, we're very fortunate to have Jim Sacco, the former county budget director, working with us, and he's bringing in his experience in what is a very different type of budgetary environment. But he's been helpful and will continue to be helpful as we develop this. There's a lot of small cities that don't do much anything, quite honestly. Around here, there's a few that do more, and we're talking and looking at what they provide their councils in the public to see if any of those are germane to what we'd like to present to you as a possible way forward in the future. So yes, we're looking at multiple jurisdictions and what they do and what they provide. From a reporting standpoint, some of the possibilities include what we call a PAFR. I'm going to forget the acronym in my head. So we do a comprehensive audit every year. A PAFR is essentially a truncated version of that that gives auditing information at a very high level, but instead of it being 40 pages, it's 3 pages. So that's something that we want to implement. We also want to bring back some of the more quarterly reports and things of that nature that I think would be helpful to see how we're doing. The final thing is, it's not exactly related to what you mentioned, but I wanted to put this out there that I think that there's a tremendous amount of visibility and interest in the budgetary process, but there isn't as much visibility and interest in what I would say the fiscal side, the actual side. And I think at times that can cause a little bit of confusion. I think, for instance, we've shown in the last couple of years through the budgetary process impacts in our reserves, but when you look at the actuals, it isn't actually as concerning. And there's a variety of reasons why that happens. We budget conservatively with our revenue. Certainly in this last year, we weren't able to do as much as we wanted because of COVID. I mean, that changes what the balance sheet looks like. And what our fund balance looks like. So that's something that we're really starting to think more about, and we want to bring the council more into those discussions. And that, I think, bringing full circle takes us back to what trend analysis tells us about these areas.
Okay. Craig, was your hand up?
I have some discussion things. I don't know that I have any questions.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess I have a question. Are you looking at new funding streams?
That will be part of the broader conversation. And I think that ties back into the point I just made, is that the town is in very good shape now as it relates to its fund balance, its reserves and the like, even though from a budgetary standpoint, it can look a little more concerning. We absolutely can see on the horizon certain expenditures that we hadn't previously accommodated. So the wildfire expenditures, and it depends on how much the town ultimately decides to take on as it relates to that. So that would be a potential area, an area for potential further revenue enhancement. The example that we had here in the staff report around the construction road impact fee is an interesting one, right? We didn't obviously make significant budget changes after that money left. So there is some general fund money going in. So that's one in action that we can actually see occurred. So we certainly don't want to take anything off the table. And I think our analysis and our forecasting will start to tell us where there will be those pressure points, where we might start to see areas where, gosh, we need to bring in a revenue stream, whether it's restricted for a specific purpose or it's a general fund sort of support. I wouldn't recommend anything in the short term because I think we're in good shape. But that's what we hope to be able to provide you and give you that guidance.
Thank you. Let me see if there are comments from attendees. Does anybody in the audience wish to make a comment? If so, please raise your hand. Nope. All right.
Oh, we got one.
I see one. I see one.
Oh, did one pop up?
Yes.
Yes, Rita Combs. Yes, it's pronounced Comus. But I'd like to say that for the future budget, we just need more money for protection for the hazards of wildfire and earthquakes. There's just not enough money right now planned, but there definitely needs to be more. Thank you. Right. Are there any other comments from attendees? Okay, I'm going to move back to the council. Comments? Craig?
Yes, I think it's definitely useful and interesting to see these trends in how the money's been flowing. But I think historically, when we've had these conversations, we've always been looking at individual expense items. And so I think Sarah's notion of sort of rolling it up and getting a sense of how does this fit in the overall picture, because while the sheriff's contract has gone up enormously, there are probably other areas that have gone down enormously. Our revenues have gone up substantially in the last number of years. If we add 250 more housing units, then 10 years from now, we'll have a dramatic increase in our property tax revenue. So I think we need to consider not just these individual expenses, but get a better sense of what the overall picture is of inflows versus outflows and how they all add up. And that will help us understand how we can prioritize. How much extra money do we have to spend on earthquakes and fire and other safety issues? Do we have money to hire a contract analyst to help us figure out how to modify the general plan to change the zoning to protect the Frog Pond road remnant? Those sorts of issues, which I think focusing narrowly on any of these issues can definitely draw out problems. I mean, it's clear that we're going to have another, shall I say, because Ann and I just came off of one, it feels like last week, stern discussion with the sheriff's office about the rising costs and what the implications of that are. But to some degree, as long as we can keep paying for it and we're not having to increase taxes or face shortfalls or cut programs that we want to do but we can't, if everything's going up and it's all adding up to not a negative number, then we're still doing okay, as long as we're focusing on the priorities. But that bigger picture of not just what the individual outflows are and individual items that are growing, but the how it all nets out and balances out, I think is very important to keep an eye on, because otherwise we can get focused on things that really aren't problematic at all.
Thanks, Craig. Was that your?
That was me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just in general, I mean, the revenue line and the expenditure line have been converging gradually over years. They will cross at some point. With the forecasting that we're talking about, especially kind of this aggregate forecasting, we just need to know how urgent it is. And we have to think about, in the future, we will have to think about other revenue streams. And, that forecasting and looking at that trend is just a feel. It gives us a feeling of how urgent it is. It also gives us an argument for explaining why we might need some point we may have to go out and ask for something like a parcel tax or an impact fee. And this forecasting tool helps us explain why we're asking for that and why we think it's necessary. So
if I might, I think that's kind of to my point. It's not clear to me that the revenues and the expenses are changing relative to each other. I don't think that they have over the last 20 years. If you look at the numbers, that as our expenses have grown, our revenues have grown at roughly the same rate every year. It fluctuates. Some years we have a budget surplus, some we have a budget deficit, but it bounces either side of zero, and it hasn't really been growing in magnitude or in sign over 20 years if you draw a trend line. So I think we do need to consider both of those things and look at the actual trends and the numbers, because I think we tend to mislead ourselves by focusing on, our road costs have gone up by X amount. Our revenues for the road fund have gone down because we had an illegal tax that got revoked. If you look at the overall trends, whether actuals or budgetary, they're pretty stable. They're surprisingly stable. There's fluctuation for sure year to year, but I'm not convinced that we're necessarily, historic trends are problematic. That's not to say there aren't future issues that aren't shown in the historic trends, like wildfire and earthquake safety, and how are we going to pay for the infrastructure to support 250 housing units, and various other things that are upcoming future problems that we should be concerned about and that we need to be looking ahead to and maybe planning for. But the historic trends are not very concerning to me.
Well, and if I could, one of the things is, one of the examples I would have been interesting to provide to show kind of the other side of this is in 2000, just because I have it in front of me, I'm going to 2002 budget, and I'm going to compare it to actuals. I know that's apples and oranges a bit. Property tax that was adopted for the 2002 budget was $396,000. That has exploded in 20 years. To something close to 5 times the amount. And there's no reason to think that that won't continue, especially in a town like Portola Valley, where it only takes a few homes to go on the market that haven't been on the market for 20 years, and suddenly they're selling at a high value. So that's a good example. Now, another one that's really interesting, if you look back 20 years ago at sales and use tax, it was pretty close to what it is now. In 2002, we budgeted $171,000. Last year it was 206. It's just not growing. And there's a variety of reasons why that's the case, and that's an analysis we want to do as well. So to Craig's point, this is exactly why we want to be able to provide this to you, is to start making those kinds of analyses.
John.
Muted, John.
Thank you. Much as I hate to give up one of our charming Portola Valley seat of the pants processes, it makes perfect sense that the more we know and the more data we have and the more we can see what happened in the past related to now and the future, we can make better decisions for sure. I hope Craig is right. I mean, I've seen some of the same figures, and it does look like things have balanced out remarkably well. Looking at OPEB issues and other long-term liabilities, I don't see that really staying that way forever. I think we have real danger of having those two lines cross at some point. But as long as we can see a little more clearly how that goes, I think we'll be in good shape. And we've got a real good opportunity, I think, to look back at the construction traffic road fee issue again, and see if we can get some more revenue coming in that maybe is more directed. And I think long term that makes a lot of sense to go that route. So,
yeah, if I may, that's an interesting example, because we certainly don't want to create future general fund revenue issues, and that's sort of what happened in 2010. We've been able to accommodate it, but that's not something we should always want to do. So.
Okay. Sarah, do you have any more comments? Or are you okay?
Yeah, no, it's the same. I think this discussion, I guess, alone to me is illustrative of why you need this kind of high level tracking, and including historical year over year. So everybody's working from the same page from a factual, line item, top line down. That's all.
Great. All right. And so the next steps are, Jeremy?
Well, I didn't hear from the council tonight that there was a particular area that they thought they wanted to look at in the very short term. So we had anticipated more than one budget study session, but we may not do that at this time. Having the check-in and knowing that we're on the right course is always a nice thing to do. So I think that that's a primary takeaway tonight. And we're going to incorporate all of this into what the next budget cycle looks like for us. So what you should anticipate, and the Finance Committee should anticipate, is a few things. First, having data available to you to look at historic data. Our first attempts at forecasting for some of our major revenue and expenditure lines. And the third piece, which is connected to this, but it's not, is the opening up the, fully opening up the OpenGov transparency tool and having more of these things online so the residents can look at it. So that's what we would anticipate. What that may or may not, what that may mean is that we come to you a little earlier in the budget cycle. Cindy and I haven't had any kind of in-depth conversation about this, but we might find things that we want to talk to you before we give you a draft budget. So that could happen, earlier in May than we would normally do. But we'll see how that all sort of shakes out as we're designing our process. But as always, appreciate the input. I'm glad we're on the right track.
Yep, I think you're on the right track.
Thank you.
Item number, excuse me, 13 is a recommendation by our town attorney. It is the final reading of ordinance, amend municipal code to restrict activity on high fire danger days, the first reading. And this comes back to us from the November 11 council meeting where we directed staff to make changes. Jeremy, are you handling this one?
I'm actually, I can do 30 seconds on this because I think it's fairly straightforward. And Cara, if you want to jump in. The council at the November meeting instructed us per what we had brought forward to eliminate the public safety power shutoff language that we had included. So that's primarily what happened here. So we think that this is in good shape to move forward on its first reading. Cara, do you have anything to add?
I think there was a few other changes that we made. The council asked us to look at a graduated penalty schedule. And so we added that into the ordinance. We also, the council asked us to downgrade the ordinance violation from a misdemeanor to an infraction. So infractions just involve penalties. They don't involve jail time. And then also the council asked us to clarify in the ordinance that the violations could be applied to both the homeowner as well as the contractor. And so all of those changes have been incorporated into the ordinance.
Okay, do council members have questions? All right. No, oh, Sarah, yes.
One thing that's kind of, I've obviously read through it, but one thing in practice, I guess I'm curious about is how this will be enforced. If you could just describe what you guys envision.
Well, this is the $64,000 question with much of what we do, to be honest. The vast majority of what we do from a code enforcement standpoint is based on resident complaints. And it is, I think it's fair to say that it's unlikely that we'll be able to do a whole lot with the complaint that doesn't have any kind of underlying evidence or information. The PV Connect tool, folks could upload or send to us pictures and the like, and that would be a little bit more helpful. Certainly if we see something with our own eyes while we're undergoing our regular activities in town, we would let our code enforcement team know and go out and have a conversation with people. But it is hard to enforce. What you hope happens is the majority of people see that there's new rules and consider it and just put it in place. But if we got the complaints and we had good information to substantiate it, at least we would have a conversation with somebody. And even if they deny it or otherwise, they know that we're aware. That's usually how we approach it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let me see if there are any attendee questions. Rita.
Yeah, Monday of this week was a high fire danger day, but I looked and I didn't see any flags or notices to the community so that contractors and and people working on properties would know that information. And usually if they're doing a build, the owner most likely is not there, but they're into the town, and there was no restriction, from my home all the way down to Alpine. There were quite a few cars seriously working on 4 different properties. But how are we going to, moving forward, make sure, are we going to put a flag there, perhaps at Ford Field and at the town center, so people coming into the town could know that it's Portola Valley and it's a high fire red flag day, so that they can choose to do things differently that day. We can't rely on the residents to tell the workers, the construction people, or the gardeners. So is there a plan to figure out a way to let the public know on those days?
Well, as it sounds like you may have missed it, we did put out a notice through our tools about Monday. So residents, if they're subscribing to our email accounts or if they're on our website, they would have had that information. I think, to be realistic, it really will take people to understand what the rules are and ask their folks not to do it. If this is an issue that we do have, as it relates to other kind of construction activities. It is not uncommon that someone wants to get a project done and they may tell their folks to do something that they shouldn't do. It happens. So we do rely on people to let us know. That will be our primary tool, will be letting folks know through our tools that these are the rules, and there will probably be a period of time where we have to enforce them, or at least go out and talk to lots of people because they aren't aware. But we certainly can look at other ways to let people know. I'm not a big fan of signage or otherwise, because I think that people just tend to ignore it, honestly. But there's other ways that we can potentially reach out to folks. But like most of our rules, it really requires residents to know what they are and work with us in enforcement. Thank you.
Will we be then contacting all contractors to let them know of this new rule? Or perhaps put a red flag on those areas with a notification so that they could read it themselves?
We will, of course, let any new rules that affect contractors know what those rules are. I'm not sure about putting out a red flag. I have no opinion on that at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristi?
There we go. Thank you. I think I agree with letting contractors know as they drive in that it's a red flag day, and that they get to know our city by seeing that red flag, whether it be posters in different locations. Many of them eat at our grocery stores. I'm not sure how to get it out. I know I've emailed contractors that I know, my current one or a different one that I know work in the area, and he's often said, thanks so much, but I don't know if he chooses not to go. I think it's invited by the neighbor if they want to abide by this rule or not. I abide by the rule, but not all neighbors abide by the rule. So, and I did want to point out that when Stanford did clear along Alpine Road, it was a high fire day. It was a red flag day. And I went, I did ask them, did you know it's a red flag day? And they said, we know, and we have approval. And now we have an ordinance coming out that, so we need to all work together. And this was only a month or two ago. So it did scare me, because that was a lot of things happening. And it's wonderful to have help with fire prevention, but not on red flag days or high fire days. So I found that everybody has to work together on that one. Even though the date was planned, you can never guess the high wind, high fire day. So even though they were all supposed to come in and all the trucks were coming in and you can't cancel it, well, you need to cancel it, because I think high fire is what we're all concerned about. And I guess, yeah, I'd like the contractors to see it as they drive in our city and get to know what it means to see a red flag.
Thank you. Okay, council. Does anybody have a comment or would anybody like to make a motion? Craig?
I have both. I think this redraft exactly hits the nail on the head, and so I would move approval of this resolution.
Second.
Good. Who was you, John?
That was me.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is the first reading of the ordinance, and so the motion would be to waive the reading and the ordinance and approve, and then we will bring it back for a second reading next week.
That was what I meant. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Discussion? Okay, Jeremy, roll call.
Councilmember Alves.
Aye.
Councilmember Wernicott. Didn't hear you, Sarah. You were muted.
Sorry, guys. Aye.
Councilmember Richards.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes.
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Right. Item number 14, Council Liaison Committee and Regional Agencies reports. Let's start with Craig since he's at the top of the screen.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna switch folders here.
Not at the top of my screen. I thought you would have picked Jeff, but
no, he's at the top of the
screen. Screen is different in Zoom. Okay. No. All right, let's see. In chronological order, there was a Trails Committee meeting. So this is going back to November 17th. I guess we didn't have our last meeting, so it was a while ago. I was not able to attend that meeting because I had a work commitment. Let's see. I didn't get a follow-up on that one, but I did on the next one. Next one I had was Finance Committee on the 30th. The major discussion there was the one that we had. The committee also chose a new lead educator, as we call them, because they're not advisors, I guess, or something because of the Form 700 thing. So anyway, now that Bill Urban has stepped down, we have a new educator on town investments who helps the finance director and town manager decide if and when to make changes in our portfolio. And let's see, committee council workshop. I guess we're having a workshop with all of that. That's all of the committees on the 27th. We discussed that briefly as well, what that involves. Then next would be Trails Committee on December 1st, which I also was not able to attend. But I think that at that one of the major items, and maybe Jeremy can provide a little more information in his summary. I think he was there. The Stanford Wedge project, which I guess is now called Portola Terrace or something. They've given it a name from their side. The trails element of that project, I believe, was reviewed by the committee, and I've had a follow-up from the committee chair, Gary, who let me know that the committee is not best pleased with the current proposal from the applicant on that project as to where the trails should be sited. And so there may be more work to do there as it moves through the review process to potentially amend it to become what the committee feels would be more in line with what the trails element of our general plan suggests for that property.
Greg, do you want me to speak to that now, or do you want me to do that?
I would, whatever makes more sense.
I'm happy to do it now. I've had conversations with Gary as well, and Laura and I both attended the Trails Committee meeting a few weeks ago, and we're actually planning to attend other committees that will touch the Stanford Wedge project. I totally understand the frustration that the Trails Committee has as it relates to what they have provided back vis-a-vis comments on the trails component of the project. While it was not an easy answer to provide, it was a truthful answer to the committee that there's no obligation for any applicant to accept any commentary. They can come forward with the project they want to present and make that argument. And sometimes it's to their own detriment. Sometimes people are successful at that. But we don't have a tool to say you must do this or you must do that. Now, want to make this point very clearly. Staff does indicate to applicants when we think that there's a real issue and that they should reconsider. This has been an area where we've asked them to look more closely at what's been provided from the Trails Committee. But there were certainly some committee members that were frustrated by that. I also understand that that Stanford's put out some materials, promotional materials on the project, and one is a 2-pager on trails, which I think the Trails Committee was a little concerned about as well. And again, it's not an easy answer to provide, but Stanford University can say what they want about the project that they're proposing. We have certainly asked them in the past where there's been real factual errors to change those, but something interpretive as it relates to the general plan or trails map or the like is a little bit beyond what I'm comfortable saying to somebody, other than you guys really should consider this. So I hope that's helpful, but that's certainly what we've conveyed. It's really tough as a volunteer to put in that kind of time and to see someone not accepting it. I totally understand that. And there's a million reasons why Stanford will or won't accept those things. So it does play out. But the work that the Trails Committee and other committees have done has just been extraordinary on this front. And it will be vetted in the formal process that'll start in January.
Yep. Thank you for that supplemental info. Then the last meeting I had was, actually second last meeting I had was a BPTS meeting. Let's see. There was the one major issue that came up, or one issue that came up that I followed up with Jeremy on, is that they had agendized and discussed briefly an item about harassment, abuse, or liability concerns. So if a committee member or a member of the public has a concern about another committee member or a staff member or so on about harassment issues or potential liability concerns or things like that, we don't have a section dealing with reporting those sorts of things in our committee handbook right now. So as you all know, well, at least those of you who are on the council at the time know, we've recently revisited those elements for our employee handbook and have clear paths for anybody who has an issue of those types to say, this is the person you can go talk to. If you don't want to talk to that person, here's an alternative, all those sorts of things, to be able to provide paths for people to feel comfortable about reporting such issues. After the committee discussed it, I brought it up with Jeremy and suggested that we might think about updating the committee handbook at some point to copy and paste the relevant sections from the employee handbook and figure out who the right people are for committee members or committee chairs to go to if they have issues of those kinds.
If I could, I'm sorry, just as a follow-up, I had a really nice conversation with the chair of that committee, and we've already started to do some research on this. I think it's a fairly easy thing to put into the committee handbook. We'll have to bring that back to council for approval. The chair, more than one chair, has also expressed some interest in looking at some of the procedures and policies that the council's put in place over the last few years related to public speaking decorum and the like. So we've been providing that as well. So that came out of that conversation.
Okay. And that's, and then the last meeting I had was actually with our recently ex-council member Wengert. We had a final update meeting on picking the details of the color scheme for the website. And it was long delayed because of my lack of being able to get organized enough to meet with Ann. But we finally did nail down the color scheme, sent that off to Carrie and the crew building the new website. And so the new website should be coming in the new year, early in the new year, probably.
Early in the new year sounds good.
Vague enough for you?
Thank you. The staff is so excited about this. I know the council is too. And a lot of work to do. We have to verify that every page that exists is a good page, has good content on it, whether they should be deleted, create new pages. There's a lot of examples of new pages we need to do. Council members have been really instrumental in identifying some of those as well. And then obviously the communication suite piece of this is just going to be a huge portion of it. But yeah, I think in the new year, and if you recall, we're not going to let perfect be the enemy of good. We're going to roll this out and it won't be complete. And we know that, but we want to get some stuff out there. So they'll be updating the page, updating the website, even though the basic frame will be there and some important content will be there, but we'll be updating some of the other pages as we move forward. Thanks.
Okay, Jeff?
I have not had any town meetings last few weeks, other than kind of the informal things that we've been doing with the school district and Sequoias. The school district kind of continues to have concerns about people on their fields, people on their campuses during school hours. And so they continue to get people sort of walking through with dogs who are surprisingly sort of brazen about sort of walking through and not leaving, even though they see that there are kids studying or eating lunch, or CMS principal Kristen Shima has had to confront people pretty forcefully on more than one occasion and ask them to leave, which never used to be a problem, quite honestly. But I don't know. I think people have just gotten used to the fact they can walk through there at all times. So that's been a bit of a concern. That and just they've been concerned about they're doing their best to work with dog group to make sure that dog group can continue to work there. And dog group has been very good about trying to keep the fields clean when they're out there. So it seems to be working out okay so far. It's just been kind of just an ongoing concern, wanting to maintain kind of the safety and integrity of the fields. Peninsula Clean Energy has now officially had a board meeting that included our newest member, which is Los Banos. They were the one community in Merced County. We reached out to Merced County because Merced County is the host of the Wright Solar Project, which was the largest, our first fully contracted new solar facility, which we went live in last January. We reached out to Merced County as sort of the hosts of the facility and trying to, just inviting anyone who's interested to if they wanted to either form a CCA or join us. And Los Banos is the one jurisdiction so far that has joined up. So we now have a 23rd member of the JPA. And we're sort of looking forward to hopefully being able to extend some of our programs and what we're doing with clean energy to Merced County. We've rolled out a couple more programs. We're trying to build more charging infrastructure, including at schools. So I actually just sent a quick note off to the school district here, just to see if they wanted to add some chargers like for teachers' vehicles or public vehicles on the campuses to a possible opportunity. Our annual EV project, our EV incentive program, which includes rebates for new electric vehicles, which can now be bought anywhere as long as you're a resident of the county. You can buy it somewhere else because we discovered that was becoming kind of a barrier to people taking advantage of it. But we're rolling out our programs as quickly as we can and trying to spur more electrification of uses. And in the meantime, we're doing everything we can to buy cleaner and cleaner power. So that's what I have right now.
Great, thank you. John?
Yeah, I had just an ASCC meeting. It was interesting because it was the first rollout of the new voluntary preliminary review process, and there were 3 new houses on the docket, 2 on Palmer Court and 1 on Possum Lane. I think it went very well. They were sort of feeling their way as to how the committee is going to address individual projects, and I think it went fine, and the applicants seem to be happy with the way it went. So I think we're up to a good start on that, and hopefully we'll save people the problems that have sometimes come up where they get too far into a project and discover they have to make major changes on a late date after things have been already accomplished, spending a lot of money and going backwards. So I think it's a great dry run, and hopefully we'll be able to keep it going on the same track. And I think what happens generally on this types of approaches is that they tend to get a little more complicated as they go on, and that tends to draw them back into where we were before. So as long as we can keep an eye on how the process evolves, I think it'll work out well. That was that. That's all I had.
Well, I have a whole bunch, and I really don't want to torture everyone. So I think I'll just list where I went and maybe pull one item. Is that a good idea, Jeremy?
Sounds fine.
All right, so I had a CCAG meeting on November 12th. There were 3 presentations, update on the construction of the San Mateo 101 Express Lanes project, update on commute.org, which is just a little bit affected during COVID. And then there was a very interesting presentation by Jillian Adams from ABAG MTC about the RENA numbers and where they come from. I did want to read you some comments from my colleagues about their RENA numbers. A woman from Pacifica, did they take into account dedicated open space, sea level rise, fact that Pacifica has no jobs? Okay. Ned Fluitt from Woodside, did they take into account wildfire or proximity to WUI? That's another one. Diane Pappen from San Mateo wanted to know why Marin County's number is so small. Carol from South San Francisco says we have developers waiting for funding for low-income projects. Help us, basically we don't, we need money if you want us to build housing. That's another one. I mean, Catherine from Foster City, who is no longer on the council, said the size of the land mass and the population, there's no possibility in Foster City to build 2,000 units. It is impossible. Gina Pappen said the methodology is flawed, must focus on this. One size fits all assumptions applied to San Mateo County by ABAG are not appropriate. MTC made mistakes in calculating developable land. The 2050 plan is flawed and must be adjusted. Adam of San Carlos talked about the number of jobs that are being done remotely now. Post-COVID world, more people will live remotely. It is flawed to have it focus on where you work. So that's just a taste. Nobody's happy. I know later in the agenda, you will see a letter that we wrote. I don't know when they will be responding. I don't really know what's going to happen. I think that was the most interesting thing from that meeting. Then there was an Express Lanes meeting the next morning, and we had a presentation on, and here come the acronyms, BAFA O&M agreement, BATA agreement, Caltrans O&M agreement, and CHP agreement, with 4 operating agreements between BAFA, BATA, Caltrans, and CHP. I think you could almost get a beat going when you say this enough times. So it was an interesting discussion about policy and all these agreements and how it's all going to fit together. And so the bottom line is we're moving forward. Those express lanes are still scheduled to open next year. We had a town sustainability committee meeting. Let's see. Oh, this was the meeting where Levy came up with the idea that it would be nice if everybody in their neighborhood would clean around their fire hydrants because they're now covered with leaves. And she noticed that the construction workers were parking in front of the hydrants because they couldn't even see them. So clean around the fire hydrants and then maybe repaint them. And I know that Jeremy called Dawn at Cal Water and she thought it was a great idea. So we'll see where that goes. let's see what else. Oh, I have a note. Ask Jeff about floor heaters. I guess I better look into that because I have no idea what it means. It was something about electric floor heaters. I have no idea. I'll find out. It was probably Stefan, and I'll find out. There are still rain garden rebates. And then Brandy just updated the group on the fact that people will be able to pay for their business license online, be able to pay for more stuff and apply online next year. She talked about the PSPS event. The leaf blower initiative goes into effect January 23, 2020, correct? Right around the corner. What else? She updated the group on the CPUC issuing a proposed decision on our rate case for the smart water meter project. What's happening with that? Is that still sort of in limbo, Jeremy?
Well, it looks promising, but then there was some additional language from the Office of the Ratepayer Advocates or whatever their new name is. And so we think it's going to go fine, but still a little up in the air.
Okay. And then Levy wants to do a book group, environmental books. And I helped her to pick out the most interesting book, which I can't even remember what it's called. But we are going to work together, and there's also a movie associated with it. And we're going to roll that out next year. And then Brandy talked about updating the cap. And they're supposed to have another meeting before the end of the year, but we'll see if that happens. Then there was an RMCP, Resource Management Climate Protection Committee meeting. There was an update on Presidio Graduate School led single family home electrification systems mapping project, a presentation on PSPS grid improvements to reduce customer impacts. That was by Bill, and I think that he might have made a few references to Portola Valley. And then there was a BOSCA update on current water supply conditions. Okay, this was November 18. So let me tell you the current water situation on November 18. Yeah, righty. Okay, over the past 10 years, we're using 20% less water in the San Francisco, area, San Francisco Bay Area. And as you know, our water is coming from Hetch Hetchy, and Hetch Hetchy right now is at, Tuolumne's at 82.5% storage, and the local system is 74.5% storage. So we're around 80% of storage. So even if we have a whole year with almost no rain, we're going to be okay. However, next year will not be good. So basically we have another year, we can make it with just what we've got in storage. We are using less water still, which is good. Than we were, I think the baseline year was something like, was it 2015 or 2013? Anyway, we're still
2013.
2013, okay.
I think that's right.
It was interesting. There was a question, are people using less water due to COVID? No, they really aren't. A lot of member agencies are finding the opposite. Residential water demand has gone up. And maybe they're inside, they're watering more. I don't know.
Those are less efficient than large buildings for water.
Yeah, yes, less efficient than large buildings. And was there anything else interesting? So it is, as you all know, they are predicting a drier year with the La Nina. But again, no one really knows. Right now, it does not look great. But we will be okay for 1 year. Okay, the Planning Commission had 2 items. Both of them were residents who asked for exception requests for utility undergrounding. As you know, if you do, certain things, it triggers the utility undergrounding mandate. And both of these residents argued that it was going to be very expensive. and disruptive, I think, because in both cases you couldn't do a straight line. One of the houses, it actually was going over all sorts of stuff like French drains. So the commissioners started thinking, you know, they were starting to think that they're granting too many exceptions. What was the intent of this? I can remember the intent. The intent wasn't just aesthetics. It was also because a long time ago we had a lot of power. We lost power many times, and it was a way to underground the utilities to help a little bit with that. So they're thinking that the town council should start looking at this. Should undergrounding be part of a fire policy? And if so, that would allow us to give the planning commission guidance. Right now, they feel they can't take an ordinance designed for something else and apply it to fire, because it wasn't really applied to fire in the beginning. So they are basically kicking the can down the road to us. I believe both these were continued as they did a little more investigation, but I think this is going to land in our laps at some point. Okay, I finished the progress seminar, and actually the last day was very interesting. And what's happening is that in the past, has anybody been to the progress seminar besides me? And yes, I know you have, Jeremy. But it was kind of just all San Mateo County politicians and kind of all the same people talking about all the same things. Am I right? Jeremy? Sort of. Well, since Josh Becker is now our new state senator, he brought in some hot tech people who started talking about a completely new arena of things. I mean, the progress seminar was never really about Silicon Valley. It was more about San Mateo County city council supervisor concerns. So I thought it was really refreshing and interesting. And they also had, the keynote was a really good one, fireside chat with Voice of America Bureau Chief, Stephen Herman. You know Voice of America, which some say is just American propaganda, right? But I enjoyed it very much. So I'm hoping this is the shape of things to come for the progress seminar. Now, another thing I listened to, because Joyce Sheffrin got me into the webinar, was the League of Women Voters of the Bay Area did a 2-hour webinar about arena numbers, and basically starting way back here, where do they come from? You know, who HCD comes up with the number, then it goes down to, you know, all these little, you know, for us, it goes to MTC and ABAG. And it was just an exhaustive amount of research. And the people who were speaking were, I can't remember. They had like 3 panelists, but this is on their website. And I think anybody who is getting on their soapbox to complain about the arena numbers should first listen to this webinar and then weigh in. So I would like to get this information out to the public somehow in January. We don't have to do it now, but it was just an excellent, excellent program. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is I've been doing some of the little library events. I did a art journal using art crayons, and it was really, really fun and relaxing. And then last night I listened to an author talk with Obi Kaufman, who wrote The Forests of California. And I think This Is Water. He's an artist, painter. He's like a biologist. He's sort of a philosopher. He's an environmentalist. John, do you know who he is? Obi Kaufman. He is so out there, but it was fascinating, and his books are gorgeous. You have to get his books. So the library is doing really, really nice things. Okay. Now we will move on to Jeremy's town manager report.
Thank you. In no particular order, staff is working to bring back the green building ordinance sooner than we had initially anticipated. So we're hoping to have something before the council in February. It does mean that we're probably going to put aside some work, unless our former intern Brandon can do some of that on the climate action plan. But I wanted to let you know. The AM radio that we're hoping to have installed at Peak Lane, just a status update, is nothing much has changed. We have put out a request for a contractor to do the work, but haven't heard back from anybody yet. So that's been holding us up primarily. Marianne mentioned the letter to ABAG, which is in the Council Digest tonight, so people take a look at that. Our fields at Town Center, the softball field and the performance lawn are going to be open for the winter. We would normally close the softball field for renovations, but we wanted to leave at least some recreational activity open at Town Center during COVID, but the other fields are closed for their renovations right now. The library is working to bring their own Wi-Fi to all of their systems. So we're expecting to have Wi-Fi at the Portola Valley Library that should have coverage about 100 feet outside, which will help a little bit further on the campus. As you know, we already have county Wi-Fi in the community hall, but it's nice to see that occurring. An update on race and equity diversity training. Cara, thank you very much for your help. As this body knows, been trying very hard to find an organization that would do training for the council, and they're so busy that we don't often hear back from them, if at all. One organization called Race Forward, which is really highly recommended by people in this field, has actually issued some tickets for trainings in January, and we forwarded that to the council, and I know some council members are planning to do that. Our staff had diversity training actually yesterday with our longtime trainer Zakia, and staff found it to be a wonderful experience, learned a lot. For some of us who've done the training in the past, it was a great refresher on the things that we should be considering. And I was really heartened to hear from my staff ideas that they had about writing that into the personnel manual and other things that we'll be rolling out. So happy to hear that. Final thing, council knows, the public may not know, we did receive a grant from the Transportation Authority of San Mateo County to fund the 2 rapid flashing beacon projects. This is really exciting. It's been a while since we got a grant. We will make a modification to the budget as the council did put aside some monies for that project, and that won't be necessary at this point when it's appropriate. With that, that's my report. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, that is really, really great news about the grant for the rapid flashing beacons. The first time we tried with the other was CCAG money we were going for, right? And we didn't make that one.
No.
So this is why it is so important to have a regional presence, because they know us now because we're on all these boards. They know Jeremy. Jeremy's everywhere. And when they know you, they take your requests seriously. So we need to keep that regional presence up. Okay, Council Digest. November 12. Okay, I don't think there's really anything there of interest, correct? November 19, I need to pull 4. The City Selection Committee meeting. Okay, I'm so sorry that we're in COVID, Sarah, because otherwise you would be attending the annual city selection meeting for Council of Cities at the Firehouse in Colma, and it is an unbelievable experience. But we won't be doing, right, Craig? Even you found it amazing, right? Okay, it's like it's like something out of what you would imagine. I don't know, Chicago in the 19.
Yeah.
Literal smoky backgrounds.
Yeah,
Absolutely great.
really. Okay, so we're not doing that this year, but what always accompanies that meeting is our elections for a lot of seats, such as the TA board, ABAG, LAFCO, et cetera. And this year, the election will be held virtually on the 18th. And there are a couple seats that are contested. So Jeff and I have talked to the applicants. I'm speaking of the applicants for 2 ABAG seats. There are 2 open ABAG seats. It's a very short term. Both of them only go till June, and then they'll have to be elected again. But generally, if you get in, you're in. And so the applicants are Carlos Romero from East Palo Alto, Giselle Hale from Redwood City, Rick Bonilla from San Mateo, and Mark Nogales from South San Francisco. I'll give my opinion, then you can give your opinion. I think Carlos is a no-brainer. He's been an alternate for years and years. Affordable housing is his specialty. He chairs 2 other ABAG committees. He knows, he gets the merger of MTC and ABAG. He's going to follow it through. I mean, he is very competent to serve on that body. So I think he's great for 1 seat. The second seat, I think, should be chosen between Rick Bonilla of San Mateo and Giselle Hale. I've talked to both of them. It's been really hard for me. I like Giselle. She's young. She's really ambitious. She gets work done. But then Rick has a lot of the land use policy work. He's also been on a couple ABAG committees. And I finally decided that I think in the next 2 years, we need really, really experienced people on that board. It's a giant board. I mean, it's 9 counties. And for that reason, I think I'm leaning towards Rick. So my recommendation would be Rick and Giselle. Mark is nice, but his main reason to run is for geographical representation. And I don't think that matters. You're representing the whole county. And it's a weird argument anyway, because before you had Wayne Lee from Millbrae and Rich Garbarino from South City. So, so now, Jeff, what do you recommend?
Mary Ann, just to clarify, I think you're saying you want Carlos and Rick, right?
Carlos Romero and Rick Bonilla for the open ABAGs.
Okay.
I agree. They're both great people to take it on.
And if one of them drops out, because you often do lots of voting, then I would definitely go for Giselle. And if Carlos gets in, I would definitely go for either one of those to do the alternate, which Carlos is working.
Yeah.
Do you have a different opinion, Jeff?
No, I came to the same conclusion you did. Carlos and Rick are experienced, and I think they'll do a good job. I'd love to get, I mean, Giselle's great, and she's sort of an up and coming member of that council. I like her, but I agree with you. I think it's like, you're right at this moment. I think we do need an experienced person.
Frankly, if they do a bad job, kick them out in June.
Well, yeah, and I'd definitely like to see her as an alternate or something. I do want to encourage her to keep doing more stuff. It's just like, I agree. There's kind of a short-term need for some pretty strong, experienced leadership there right now. So.
And then there is another contested seat, LAFCO, and the 2 applicants are Harvey Rohrbach from Half Moon Bay and Ann Schneider from Millbrae. I don't know. Any thoughts, Jeff?
I actually think Anne can be fairly effective in these things. So I actually think I'd probably lean towards her. I generally like Harvey better, just in terms of like sort of working with him and getting along with him. But I think Anne could actually be effective there. Yeah.
I have not read their letters. I mean,
I haven't either. I work with them both on the PCE board.
We have till the 18th, so if anybody has any thoughts. Otherwise, I may just choose them based on their presentations. Okay. Okay. November 25, the number 7. Thank you, Craig and John, for that work.
Yes.
Staff did most of it. It was more, my comments were editorial tweaks more than anything else. I think staff.
Thank you, staff, and John and Craig. When are they supposed to respond, Jeremy?
I'm not candidly expecting
Yeah, I know.
a
I
response.
just thought I would ask.
Yeah, I would expect it gets entered in the record.
I think they received a lot of letters.
Yeah, and we know they've received it. They did let us know, but I'd be very surprised if they sent Portola Valley a individual response.
Yeah, I know.
We tried to frame ours constructively to not say, our number's too high, you got to lower it. We really tried to say, look, we recognize it needs to be higher, but too high is not necessarily feasible.
And in that CCAG presentation, somebody did ask, did you, when you did your methodology, when you did your calculation, did you factor in hazards? And they said no. So that really was your only hook.
Yeah.
Wildfire. They did not factor that in.
Right.
And they consider developable land for housing. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the other one that's important that we mentioned in there is just the cost. You know, if there's no infrastructure to support 250 housing units, it's not clear how you can create an environment in which those will get built economically if you need to put a bunch of money in to develop the infrastructure before you can even start building the stuff above ground.
Yeah.
And with construction costs already high, if you add to that infrastructure cost to support those projects, then I just don't know what kind of a housing policy we could have other than give every property developer $1 million to start, building something. It's just, I can't picture what that housing element would look like.
Yeah, I agree.
Cara, through the chair, is there a public comment during written communications?
Not usually.
You mean during
During
the
digests.
The digest?
Yeah, during the digest. Is there a public comment?
We generally don't have it, but if somebody wants to talk, they should be allowed to talk.
Is there a hand raised?
I saw one hand come up, so that's why.
Okay, so Cara, I can call on her. Okay, Kristi.
Hello. I just had a question since the RENA letter that you sent to ABAG really reflects all of the residents in Portola Valley, and some things seem vague and we don't know what it means. So I'd just like to ask, on page 1, you said we've had engagement with large landowners on opportunities on their property for housing, with one active application for a development project and a potential for an additional in the coming years. Who would that be? What landowner is that?
So I'm happy to answer this, and I have an answer and then a comment. The answer is that Ladera Community Church has come forward and indicated that they have some interest publicly in doing something. They came to a meeting, gosh, I feel like it's 2 years ago at this point, maybe a little sooner. So they publicly indicated some interest. And then my comment, just in the future, I know one of the things that Mayor Derwin's going to be talking about is that questions on items such as this the preference will be moving forward to have those answered offline instead of in the meeting. Is that correct, Mayor Derwin?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, I mean, the letter reflects from the town and from all of us, and now we have questions of what that is. So addition of new partners in the town affiliated housing program, which allows for housing development beyond single family resident development. These partners are considering future options. And who would that be?
Do you think Kristi should take this offline?
Yeah, Kristi, let's have a conversation tomorrow. I'm happy to.
I think the residents might be interested.
Yeah, but Kristi, through the chair, this is not intended to be a question and answer period. That is not what council meetings communications should be. What they should be is providing input for the council to have deliberations. So any questions and answers we're happy to take offline. This is also stuff that's been in the public record for years. So I'm happy to refer you to those web pages and other resources, but this is stuff that the council's discussed many times. So if you want to send me an email tomorrow, I'm happy to give you a call.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristi.
All right, Thursday, December 3rd. Nope, nothing. Okay, then I think we have come to the end of the road. And I would like you all to have a cozy, peaceful, solitary holiday season. And if we don't see you next week at the interviews for the Planning Commission and the ASCC, we will see you back here on January 13. Thank you for sharing this evening with us. Good night.
And
Night,
welcome,
everyone. Happy
Sarah.
holidays.
Welcome,
Yes.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Glad to have you, Sarah.
Bye.
See you Monday.
Bye.